Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is Richard Sachs. I'm your host on Lost Arts Radio, and it's nice to be back with you again today. We have a great show for you with a friend of ours and a frequent guest who's been on Lost Arts Radio several times before, Ken Rohla from Florida, inventor and engineer and health teacher and creator of the site freshandalive.com with a lot of products, some of which I've used, which have all been great, and some of the really legitimate things in the EMF protection and a lot of aspects of health enhancement and protection too. So we're going to talk about him with all kinds of interesting things today, and it should be a great discussion. So welcome, Ken, and thanks for giving us the time. I appreciate it.
Always my pleasure to speak with you, Richard.
So I did get a chance to announce our discussion enough in advance of what of the time of the discussion rather than the time of the show. So some of the people got to send in questions, and I thought maybe we'll look at those first so we make sure that we get to them, because we're going to get into all kinds of other stuff afterwards. And then as soon as those are done, and they're not that many, then we'll just go off and find out what's most interesting and relevant in the recent focus that you've got and go from there. So let me just read these one at a time for you in sequence. The first one says, and these are on all kinds of topics, when Ken has mentioned using Angstrom Minerals brand monoatomic calcium product for his dental health, does he believe that it could be used excuse me. Does he believe that it could be used successfully to rebuild tooth enamel that has been worn away by experiencing bruxism, which is grinding your teeth at night usually, which is when a person grinds their teeth when they sleep? Which supplements would he recommend for the purpose of regenerating enamel?
That's a really good question, and that's one that I had to deal with personally and still am, because I had bruxism years ago, decades ago. And one of the things I discovered, first of all, is that bruxism is grinding your teeth at night when you sleep. And it's because you get a clenching of the jaw muscles. I would wake up like in the morning, and it was really weird. I mean, I would sleep well and everything, but my jaw would be clenched tight, it'd be like, and it's because it's because of enervation of the nervous system. In other words, degradation of the nervous system, and in particular the myelin sheath on the nerves, which is it's a protective tissue that wraps around the nerves that protects it from what doctors call inflammation, which is the accumulation of acids in tissue from eating cooked food and other things. And so in my case, it turned out it was from mercury fillings. The mercury fillings were actually degrading my nervous system, which is one of the things that mercury can do. And so what I discovered serendipitously when I got rid of my mercury fillings and detoxed the mercury out of my body, the bruxism went away, but still the enamel loss from grinding my teeth. And then also I went to Hippocrates Institute in 2005 and was detoxing there for 6 weeks. I did their educator program, and I was there for 6 weeks, and I wanted to get my money's worth. So I was doing everything massively. I was, like most people were drinking 2 to 4 ounces of wheatgrass juice a day and eating live food and that kind of stuff. I was drinking like 8 to 12 ounces of wheatgrass juice a day. I was doing liver flushes with mass quantities of garlic, and to the point where, my fellow classmates could hardly stand me being in the same room because I just took garlic. So I was doing everything so massively that it did detox me really well, and it got the mercury out. But it also softened up my teeth, and I didn't notice that. Because at that time I didn't have the mercury fillings removed. And so, your teeth are not like inert rocks. They actually have a vascular system. Yeah. And they've got these little capillaries that go from the center of the tooth at the pulp outward to the surface. And fat-soluble vitamins and minerals get delivered through those capillaries to the enamel and enamelize the tooth. And so because I was cleansing so much, I was just like softening my teeth up. And my teeth, because of all the wheatgrass and stuff I was doing, my teeth turned green.
Right. And
I looked like something from a horror show. And so when I got done with the program, then I immediately went to work with Coretta Scott King, and I was living with Coretta King and spent several months dealing with her. And so I was not focused on me until maybe 4 or 5 months after the initial start at Hippocrates. So by the time I started, I noticed my teeth were chipping sometimes when I would eat hard foods, and I just thought it was kind of weird, but I didn't really realize my teeth got soft. And so anyway, I had to first figure out what the heck was going on, and then stop it. And so I got the mercury removed and had it replaced. I actually got a really cool dentist who did kinesiology, and he did this kind of it wasn't muscle testing, but it was a kinesiological test that he ran to figure out what type of amalgam or tooth filler would work on my molars that I wouldn't be allergic to, because a lot of them, even if they're enamel or something like that, you can still be allergic to them. So he found one I wasn't allergic to, and he filled my teeth. But my teeth still continued. Well, I got these pits on the front of my teeth as well from all the acids eating the live food at Hippocrates and all the lemon juice and stuff.
Some people get that from lemon, a lot of lemon in their mouth.
Yeah, it's very, very common actually for raw foodists to have a lot of teeth problems, because I believe, in my experience, because I was mostly raw, like 90% raw for about 18 years, and did it right according to all the experts, Hippocrates and Gabriel Cousins, and watched my food combining and those kinds of things. High chlorophyll diet, lots of sprouts, lots of chlorophyll, lots of greens, leafy greens and minerals and stuff. But even so, my teeth continued to decline. And I noticed, too, that all of the big raw food gurus, with maybe the exception of Marcus Rothkranz, have teeth problems. And so, and that's something they don't talk about. So I think Weston Price was right. He claimed that the humans needed animal fats to deliver fat-soluble vitamins and minerals to the teeth and the bones. And, I spent several years trying on a vegan diet to remineralize my teeth and bones, because I was starting to get the beginnings of osteoporosis. I was getting osteopenia. And the only thing that turned it around was eating raw dairy, eating raw butter and fermented, kefirs and things like that. And I know you and I have had this talk.
It's interesting that they lump animal fat all in one. They don't say meat versus dairy. And when they talk about milk, they don't differentiate between pasteurized and raw milk, which are radically different foods. Right. And they just say, well, you can't eat animal fat, and that's it.
Right. And you were the key to me figuring this out, because that was when I met you. And I remember having a conversation on the phone where you had the same dilemma, and you were looking at what to do and agonizing about, going from vegan back to eating animal products.
Yeah. It was like becoming a heretic, and going.
Yeah, but what changed it for me was when you said that you had reread the Essene Gospels of Peace, and in those books, for those folks that are not familiar, the Essene Gospels of Peace are these 4 small booklets that were translated from the Dead Sea Scrolls by
Volume 1 in particular.
What's that?
Volume 1 in particular.
Right, Volume 1 and I think Volume 4. And there's been a bunch of, I think Volume 4 may have been the one about wheatgrass juice. Because there was one where they talked about wheatgrass juice and doing enemas with it, which was interesting, because that's the foundation of the Hippocrates program.
Right.
And we're not straying away from the bruxism. We'll get back to it here.
You're right. That's
so, when you told me that you reread the Essene Gospels, and in there, whether it's, you believe it's the, original writings of Jesus or not, the fact is that these texts were a couple thousand years old, and there was a lot of ancient wisdom in them. And you said that in there, according to those texts, Jesus did not espouse a vegan diet. He espoused a vegetarian diet. And
100% raw food, interestingly.
Right, raw food and milk and honey, right? And so that, really opened my eyes up. And so I started doing that. I started eating raw dairy and raw butter, fermented kefirs and things like that. And was able to turn it around. That in combination with consuming angstrom minerals, the angstrom brand minerals, which you can get at angstrom, ANGSTROM -minerals.com. And then but I still had the teeth problem. The teeth problem was really a tough one to get rid of. And what I found was, now that did help. That actually, my teeth did start remineralizing, and I noticed, like, even though that they were pitted, they didn't hurt or have any sensitivity or anything, and the enamel started regrowing. And so it wasn't like huge chunks of, these pits were filling in, but I was getting this coating over my teeth that kept it from decaying further, and, like I said, kept me from having any issues or sensitivities. And so then I was reminded also many years ago, maybe 15 or so years ago, I was at an Ormus conference, and I met this lady who had made an Ormus trap, which is a little device that you run water through it. You just connect it to a faucet and you run water through it. And it will vortex the water in a magnetic field, and it will separate the monoatomic elements, or it will create monoatomic elements from the minerals in the water. And those minerals are very, very healing and regenerative. And she actually showed pictures of where she had one of her front teeth snapped off, right down the middle, just broken in half. And drinking that Ormus water over about 3 months, that tooth regrew. And she had pictures along the way of it, these little, like, look kind of like when you get an old ice cream cone from Dairy Queen where it's got the little twirl on the top. It kind of grew out like that. It kind of grew out like this little twirl on the tip of an ice cream cone. And then it filled in and became the rest of the tooth. Wow. And so that opened my eyes up to the possibility of using monoatomic elements to regrow teeth and bones. And so I started, growing food with monoatomic elements and rock powders and things to increase their levels, drinking vitalized water, vortex water with monoatomics in them.
Well, let me ask you one thing about the way she made that Ormus, but keep that train of thought. You said that she vortexed the water, I think you said through a magnetic field or something, is that right? Yeah,
it's using a device called a Vortrap, which is just I think you can go to CherokeeGold.net. You can actually buy these devices, or you can go to subtleenergies.com and learn how to build your own.
Okay, so here's my question, and the reason I asked that. We've both experienced the validity of the 100% live food idea, that the main nutrient of any food is life force, which hasn't been discovered by science yet. And so in the raw food, that is naturally there. That's how it grows. And with Ormus, she was doing this in a way that was coming, obviously not distilled water. She was putting some kind of good water in there that had minerals and then separating them out without boiling it or processing it or anything like that, right?
Yeah, I believe she was using well water.
Okay. And most of the Ormus suppliers that we know about, it's an extreme chemical and heat process. And, by live food criteria, it's totally dead. And that's one reason the chemicals and the lack of life energy is why I've hesitated to really get into. And it's great on plants, but eating it, you're absorbing dead energy on a subtle level. So if there's a way to create Ormus not doing that, that changes it.
Precisely. That's a very, very important point. And for many, many years, I tried these alchemical Ormus products that people were selling, and I made my own. And what I found was the problem with these alchemical forms of Ormus, they raise the superconductivity in the body too high, too fast. And so what happens is they plug into, you have these deposits of monoatomic elements in the brain neural pathways. You have them all along the nervous system that correspond to the acupuncture meridians, or in Ayurveda they call them the nadis, and in the DNA. The DNA is actually a superconducting antenna that's loaded up with these monoatomic elements. And so when you ingest them in natural forms, they go in and plug into those spots, and they raise the superconductivity, and that strengthens the mind-body connection, and it's very regenerative because basically you're regenerating your body moment by moment in various ways, but energetically you're literally like taking this light energy that's flowing through the cosmos that scientists call scalar energy and converting it into matter in the body and altering matter in the body with your own consciousness.
So in nature, those Ormus elements would come from the plants. that
Right.
that picked it up from the soil, really
Right.
live soil.
Exactly. If you're eating, whether you're eating plants or animals, you're getting these minerals from the soil, where bacteria break minerals down into angstrom particles and monoatomic particles in some cases, and then the plants uptake that, and then the plants themselves through photosynthesis create angstrom and monoatomic particles, and then you ingest them, and that's how you get them in a bioavailable form. You can get them in water as well if the water has been through the full hydrological cycle of the earth and it's vortexed, through magnetic fields that are out in nature, like running on riverbeds and streams and stuff like that.
Right.
But, like well water is not mature water. It hasn't finished the hydrological cycle. And so it can have a lot of hardness in it, or, even surface water can have hardness in it that the body can't metabolize. For many, many years, I asked people, all these experts, can the body metabolize these inorganic minerals, in water? And I never got a good response until Viktoras Kulvinskas, the co-founder of Hippocrates Institute, told me that yes. And in particular, I was interested in rock salt also. Can we metabolize salt?
Right.
And he said, yes, it can metabolize a certain amount as long as you've got enough enzyme activity in the body, which means the more live food you eat, the more enzymes you got to digest more of those inorganic minerals and make them organic. And see, what causes degeneration, particularly over time with all living organisms, is the conversion of organic minerals in the body to inorganic, or the accumulation of inorganic minerals and the loss of organic minerals. And so that's what causes calcification, which leads to cell membranes becoming less permeable, so nutrients can't get in, waste can't get out, arthritis, all kinds of problems are caused by this mineralization of inorganic minerals in the body. And so live food will keep that from happening. It'll slow that down. And so if you're ingesting water and foods that don't have inorganic minerals in them, or very little amounts, and you're eating a high enzyme diet, then you will live much longer and be much healthier, because you'll be regenerating the body every time you eat rather than degenerating it. And that's the real difference between a live food diet, whether you're eating animal products or not. If they're cooked, then they're going to be acidifying and they're going to cause accelerated degeneration.
Remember, even if you talk about meat, any natural carnivore is designed to eat raw meat.
Exactly.
And not just muscle meat. The real carnivores eat all the organs.
Right. And that's it. And we're the only organism on the planet that cooks its food, and hence we're the only one that have the kinds of problems that we have.
Yeah.
So it's these very, very basic fundamental things that are lead to these fundamental problems that we have in our society in many ways, because you eat cooked food, it causes inflammation in the body. Inflammation causes not only health problems, it causes anger and judgment and all these
exactly. The really tricky part is that it's tied to socializing and comfort and feeling like you're sharing the time with your friends around the meal and stuff like that.
Right.
And it's physically very addictive as well.
Right. And we can get away with about 20% of our diet cooked and still have a regenerative diet. So you could potentially eat animal products that are cooked or whatever kind of products, as long as it doesn't go over the amount, and people are different, because the more toxic and acidic you are, the less, acidic foods or acidifying food you can take. So anyway, regarding bruxism and teeth grinding and mineral loss, what I found was several things that can accelerate regeneration of bone and teeth. So one is getting well mineralized diet in a bioavailable form. So, eating locally grown as much as possible, organic food always, taking in superfoods, like blue-green algae, green powders, like Marcus Rothkrantz has some really great superfood powders at Marcus, Markus products.com.
Right.
And there's others, like Health Force has some good ones. But basically, you've got to get some well-mineralized food into you, and then get testing like a hair analysis or a fecal analysis to see what mineral deficiencies you have, and then bring those specific minerals up by taking those angstrom minerals, and then as a general mineral supplement as well, you could take like concentrates, liquid sea minerals. That's actually a really good mineral supplement that's bioavailable, and it has all the elements and trace minerals that the body needs in the exact ratios that they need them.
That's called concentrates.
Yeah, concentrates. We sell it at freshandalive.com. It's like $15 for a bottle, and that'll last you about 3 months.
Okay.
So it's very affordable, and you only take maybe a teaspoon at most a day. I think maybe only 20 drops a day or something like that. It's not a whole lot. So it goes a long way.
That's from sea vegetables, you say?
It's from the Great Salt Lake. It's from a very isolated part of the Great Salt Lake in Utah, and they test it to make sure that the water's not polluted and that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good product, and it's very affordable. Some of these mineral products can get expensive, and supplements in general can get expensive.
Yeah.
But find out what you're deficient in. As always, you always want to test to know your health status, and then use specific minerals to bring your levels up. And then I would also recommend eating some, if you're vegan, eating some raw butter if you can get it, or some raw kefirs, fermented kefirs, something like that. It was difficult for me, and it's difficult in general for a vegan to start eating animal products after they've been vegan a long time, because it's like licking a goat's underarm. You're not used to getting the musk from those products in your body, and you can taste it, and it was really hard.
Just the belief that it's going to kill you kind of gets in the way too, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does. So I started out putting it into other foods, like I would make beans or something, and and put it into there, but not heat it up and kill it. I would just warm the food and then put it in there and melt it at and basically you can tell if something's going to kill enzymes. If you can't put your hand in it and leave it, then it's too hot.
Yeah. But you don't have to eat freezing cold food all the time just because you're on a raw diet.
Exactly. I mean, that's something that when I used to do raw food classes, I'd teach people all the time, even in the wintertime, even in northern climates. You can be eating warming foods, and warm foods, up to 115 degrees is quite warm. So if you make a raw soup, I used to do this a lot. I would make a raw soup, and I would just use warm water. What I would do basically is take different kinds of vegetables and dehydrate them for about 10 minutes, and that would soften them up and make them seem cooked, but they weren't. And then I would put that into a warm broth and make a really wonderful warming soup, and yet it was all raw. Like miso soup, for example. Very, very good, high in probiotics.
And you don't set your dehydrator on 300 degrees. It has to be at a reasonable temperature, right?
Well, Gabriel Cousens actually did a study years ago showing that you can initially, for about the first, I think, half hour or so, have it on high, because the evaporation of the water will actually keep the food cool. But but you can just keep it set at 115 degrees, and in 10 minutes or so it'll be fine. I never had to crank mine way up.
Okay.
But at any rate, so stay alkaline, eat live food, lots of greens, and then some animal fats, either butter, kefirs, something like that. And then superfoods, mineral supplements, and as far as Ormus goes, I used to not recommend alchemical Ormus products at all, but nowadays I am recommending one in particular that I've been using and testing, as long as you take it in limited doses, with enzymes and things. It's called Vancouver Island Ormus. And we'll have that on our website soon, because it's from Canada, so you can order it at VancouverIslandOrmus either .com or .net.
Okay.
From Canada, but you got to pay import duties on it. So we'll have it at freshandalive.com soon. But as let's see what else. Pearlsium. There's a product called Pearlsium, Pearlcium. And it's a little bit pricey, but it's a mineral supplement made from oysters. They literally powder pearls.
Oh, okay.
They powder pearls, and pearls they're high in Ormus. They've got all these growth factors and things in them, and so that's good to take as a supplement. I've heard of people taking like 27 capsules of that per day, and in a few weeks or months, regrowing teeth and regrowing enamel and that kind of stuff. Wow. And you can also brush your teeth.
Heard of anybody regrowing teeth from scratch, where the tooth has been lost completely?
I haven't, but these things that I'm telling you, and I've got a few more tricks up my sleeve, could potentially do that. But I have not met anybody that like regrew a tooth that was pulled or was
That's
taken
what I'm
out.
talking about. Yeah.
But I believe it's possible because that Pearlsium product is a very good one to take. Typically, though, it's kind of expensive. I think it's like $60 for a bottle of it, and taking 27 capsules a day would be pricey. But
Right.
And I haven't tried that yet. But I have been brushing my teeth with it, and it does. I actually mix Vancouver Island Ormus with that, and put it on my toothbrush along with my toothpaste and brush my teeth. And then when I rinse my teeth from brushing with paste, then I use the Pearlsium and the Vancouver Island Ormus, and
you leave it in.
Don't rinse my mouth. Yeah. I don't rinse my mouth. And so I try to you get this little white crust around your lips.
Yeah.
So you might have
People
to
already know that you're strange anyway, so that's
and that people have had success with that, rebuilding teeth and tooth enamel. And then one other thing that I would use in combination with that, if you can find somebody who is a practitioner of this particular technology, there's a lady named Sherry Edwards, Sharry. So it's like Harry with an S, Sherry Edwards. Her, I forget her website. I think it's soundhealthoptions.com, I believe it is. But if you search on Sherry Edwards sound healing, you'll find her website. And she does have lists of practitioners around the country on her website.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be showing off your psychic abilities, actually. But question 2 was, does Ken think Sherry Edwards' sound healing options technique he used to help his brother heal a broken bone could be effective in rebuilding teeth that have been worn down by the grinding, or are there other devices utilizing cymatics technology as seen more effective in this situation? Cymatics being the fundamental alteration of physical structure by the effects of sound frequency and vibration. So I'm just bringing that up because you're already talking about it.
Yes, that's exactly what I believe, because as your person mentioned, my brother, I had personal experience with Sherry Edwards technology a couple of times because I have a friend who's a practitioner, and she just happens to live where I used to live up in North Carolina, and my brother snapped his leg at the ankle and crushed his foot and was in horrific pain and just wanted to die. It was so painful, and the doctors told me he was going to be bedridden for 3 months and on crutches for 3 months after that. And so I got him connected with my friend, and basically they give you this little analog MP3 player that has headphones, and you listen to it for several hours a day. In his case, he listened to it for 3 hours a day, and it regenerates everything in the body, bone, other tissues, or whatever. And it particularly works well with acute injuries, particularly recent acute injuries. And so I'd heard a lot of miracle stories from my friend, so I got it from my brother and gave it, she hooked him up, programmed the thing. What it does is it records your voice. It's a combination of computer software and this hardware it programs. And so you speak into a computer microphone, it records your voice, it analyzes it, and then it generates a tone that it programs into this, analog MP3 player. And then you listen to that for a week, 2, however many days they tell you. And then as you heal up, then they change the frequency. They re-record your voice and then reprogram the box, and you listen to it. And so my brother did that. And after a week, I called to see how he was doing, and my mother said, well, he can't come to the phone right now because he's out mowing grass with a push mower. So in 1 week, it actually healed his bone up to the point where it was normal and he could walk and use a push mower. And Sherry Edwards' own son was involved in a really nasty motorcycle accident and broke his femur, his upper leg bone, and shoved it into his abdomen and ripped his guts all up. And she used that technology on him, and it healed so completely the doctors couldn't tell that the leg was ever broken.
So what do you think are the potential uses of that. For example, you were saying you think there might be ways to regrow teeth from scratch. What about, could something like that be used?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is it for bruxism in particular, or any kind of bone or teeth issues. I think if you do a combination of live food, a well mineralized diet, angstrom minerals, monoatomic minerals, and Sherry Edwards sound technology and Ormus, I think those you could regenerate teeth, and that's actually something that I want to do when I have the time to get when I'm not traveling. It's like my travel schedule has been so busy. I haven't had a few months to sit down and just do this. I've got a friend in North Carolina, the same lady actually, who offered to let me come and stay for a week and just have it every day, zap me with it. But also you can use this if you don't have a practitioner in your local area. Sometimes they can record your voice. You can record your own voice and send it to them, and then they can plug it into their equipment and program the box for you and send it to you, and then you can do that periodically.
So are you buying the box from them? How expensive is it?
Yeah, it was about $500 when I bought mine. And different practitioners charge different amounts of money for the sessions, but the hardware was about $500. And I don't know, it may vary, because I've been told that sometimes if you wanted to buy that system for yourself, it takes some training to learn how to use it. But it varies in price significantly depending on whether they need to promote sales or not. So you might check and see if they are going to have any sales on the equipment, or just wait around for a sale on it.
If they're going to send you a recording or something to listen to, what do you mean by charging for sessions?
Well, a session would be recording your voice, analyzing it, and then programming the box.
I see. Okay. And then you just use it on your own after that.
Yeah. And so I believe that you'd have to ship the box back and forth to the practitioner, I believe. But
every time it has to be upgraded.
Yeah, it can be done remotely. Yeah, as you heal and as your conditions change and improve, the frequencies need to change as well. And so,
How often do you think?
Probably every 2-3 weeks. That was what it was with my brother. It was about every 3 weeks with my brother.
Okay.
It may vary. But you can look at some of the testimonials from people online and Sherry Edwards' site. I mean, there's some mind-blowing stuff that they've had. And my friend has told me all kinds of crazy stories about people having miraculous healings. But she did say that it works better with acute injuries and injuries that are newer than older. But still, I mean, I've helped, for example, people that have been in wheelchairs for decades to regenerate their bones and their muscles and be able to function normally again, even after decades of atrophy. So the sound,
using a combination of all of these things.
Yeah, exactly, and not even using Sherry Edwards stuff, just using live food and dense nutrition and detoxification and herbs, things like that.
Yeah.
So the body, when you give it what it needs, it will. It will regenerate tissue, amazingly so. And
including nerve tissue. I mean, there have been some cases of people with severed spinal cords that have recovered that too.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've had two clients years ago when I was still doing individual consults that one was a quadriplegic, one was a paraplegic. And in about a year's time, they regained full motor control and were able to get out of their chairs and be functional again. And the teacher that taught me how to do that, Dr. Robert Morse here in Florida.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, Morse, he does that routinely. And he had, I think, one of his clients years ago was a radio DJ who interviewed him for the radio. And the guy was in a wheelchair. And Morse said, "Would you like to get out of that wheelchair?" And the guy said, "Yeah, absolutely." He'd been in the wheelchair for 37 years. And it took Morse about a year to regenerate his nervous system and his bones. He had a leg that was so atrophied, it was all twisted up and wrapped around his other leg. And it all straightened out and normalized, and the guy could walk and function again.
Now, one thing that's really interesting about that is that Robert Morse puts people primarily on 100% fruit and gets results like you're talking about. And then at Hippocrates, they say, never do that. Only green juices and stuff like that if you want to really heal. And they're both getting great results.
Yeah, and I've studied with both of them, and I know the reality of what their clients experience.
Yeah.
And what I found is there's kind of a cross between the two works best in my experience, because Morse is, what he says, and it's correct, that fruit's very ionic, and the fluids in it are very regenerative, which is very true. And so it can move a lot of fluids and deliver a lot of nutrients and do a lot of cellular regeneration in the body. But the sugars in fruit also feed parasites and pathogens in the body. So if you've got cancer or some kind of pathogenic infection, then it can be more difficult to heal when you're feeding those pathogens with the sugars or carbs from fruits or whatever. And so Hippocrates, observed that, and so they recommended against it. What I found was doing a modification of the both of them, where I would initially keep people off of fruit in the beginning, unless they were just like really, really down and out and only had days or weeks to live. Then they need to get as much energy into the body. So I'd let them have fruit and get them out into the sun to get energy into the body.
Yeah.
But
people are being taught. They're being taught that there's no safe level of sunlight. It's a disaster.
Exactly. It's all nonsense.
It's going to kill you right away.
Yeah, that's absolute nonsense. And so, and it's not just conventional light. It's scalar energy coming from the sun and the cosmos as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going on there. But and for most people, I would initially put them on a diet high in chlorophyll and juices, but not fruit or sugars. And then start adding the fruit in, starting out with subacid fruits, like blueberries or strawberries or tomatoes or something like that. And eventually they could get to where they could add in fruit. But usually by the time they got to where they could add in fruit, they usually didn't want to, because a lot of the cravings that we have for sugars and stuff are from bacteria in our gut that make us crave it. And once you balance the flora in the gut, then the cravings go away and you start craving salads and greens and that kind of stuff.
The other thing that's kind of interesting is that if you're really short on, I think the classifications of protein, carbs, and fat and all that are very arbitrary and superficial. But if you're short on some of the other nutrient classes, you get a higher desire for sugar.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If you're deficient in minerals, you'll crave sugar. If you're under stress, you'll crave sugar.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also emotionally, if you're not emotionally being nurtured in your life, then you will crave sugar. And so
it doesn't mean it's going to make you feel good for very long, but you definitely crave it.
Makes you feel good for a little bit. It's like having a little mini vacation, and then you crash.
yeah, exactly. And then you feel like you need more.
Yeah, but if you're eating natural sugars like fruit, at least you're getting sugars in a form that are not damaging to the body.
Right.
But I just find that when I'm good and cleaned out and detoxed, that I just don't really have a taste for fruit or starches and that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, which brings up the whole fat issue again, because the fats seem to be really helpful.
Yeah, precisely. Right. Precisely. And most people, there's a lot of dogma and out there about what to eat, how to eat, and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of it is based on, particularly from the mainstream medical system, it's based on the fact that everybody is sick. Most people on this planet.
That's the baseline normal is sick.
Exactly. And so these norms are based on the fact that most people's adrenal glands are out of whack, not adrenal glands, endocrine glands. The endocrine system in general is out of whack. And so your body's not producing the correct hormones in the correct quantities. And so it throws everything out of balance because the hormones regulate thousands of functions in the body. And so things like eat right for your blood type, that's based on, it's valid from the standpoint that, if you eat certain foods based on your blood type, you'll feel better. But it's an avoidance diet, and it doesn't take into account the fact that if you heal the endocrine system and the endocrine glands, then that's irrelevant. It's like I'm type O, for example.
And there's a clue, because you don't need a different kind of fast for the blood types, you know, and there's a lot more going on. It's like scurvy is considered a deficiency of vitamin C, right? But if you eat absolutely no vitamin C for a couple of weeks, but you don't need anything else either, you don't get scurvy. And so, what's going on underneath?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in the body, and the body can also transmute elements from one to another in the body. That's been proven.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a very complex system. But, there are body types that do need certain foods, and certain foods are balancing to certain body types. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of generalization and dogma, based on flawed precepts, and a majority of those flawed precepts that I see is because they're basing it on the majority population on this planet who are sick. And so once you heal up the glands, then those rules don't apply. Also, if you're predominantly a raw foodist, those rules don't apply. One of the things I learned at Hippocrates Health Institute was that the norms for blood analysis that the medical system does do not apply to raw foodists, because they're so much healthier than average people. Their norms are completely different.
Well, the amount of nutrients you need goes down too.
Right, exactly. When your assimilation is good, you can live off of much less food, much lower calories, and a much different diet. Many years ago, before I knew any of this stuff, I was a typical American eating McDonald's double cheeseburgers all the time and garbage, and didn't know anything, and my body was clogged up. I was hypoglycemic since birth because I was born hypoglycemic, which many people are born sick. I'd say most people are these days, especially younger people.
Chronic diseases for most of the kids now.
Right. And so I did need a heavy protein diet to keep my blood sugar balanced, or I would feel crazy. I'd get like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Yeah. But once I healed up my glands, also I had a sensitivity to cold. And, it's like I was always battling my wife over the thermostat in the house. And once I healed up my glands, all that went away.
Yeah, your body heat comes back, and it's not correlated with calories, which is really interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's it. You'll see some people when they go on raw food, they become more sensitive to cold, and they need the thermostat warmer and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But when you heal those glands up, the opposite happens. Then you become more robust to heat extremes or cold extremes.
Right. Yeah, one of the things that was being talked about in one of the recent, speaking of Hippocrates, they've got a series called The Real Truth About Health that you've probably seen, right? Mm-hmm. And they were saying any dairy, which is animal protein, animal fat, spikes blood sugar and gives you diabetes.
Yeah. There's a lot of dogma on both sides of the fence, and I have never based what I teach on reading books and reading stuff on the internet. I base it on actual practice with myself and other people, my clients. Yeah. And really studying deeply. A lot of people do not study things deeply. They don't look at the facts deeply. They don't look at the data deeply. And so I don't trust anybody.
Replaced by memorization, right?
Yeah. And one of the things I realized when I got out of school, that bell curve, that grading curve in school where, a small minority of people get A's and then minority get B's, most get C's, some get D's and F's. That never ends when you get out of school. And so in any industry, in any profession, you've got a very small minority of people who are masters at what they do and really understand what they're doing. And then you've got some who are above average, but the majority are mediocre to poor. And so you have to keep that in mind when you're listening to anybody's advice, including my own. That's why I've always told people, don't listen to what I'm saying. Consider it, but go and prove for yourself. Do these things, find your own truth. You have to
become the scientist in your own life.
Exactly.
One of the people is asking, in the great Dr. Samir Osmanagic video, Pyramids Around the World and Bosnian Pyramid Energy, that is on Fresh and Alive YouTube channel, Dr. Sam mentions that the Sumerian King list records individual rulers governing for tens of thousands of years. Can Ken discuss what role the pyramids or pyramid energy shapes, scalar energy, and Ormus minerals might play in explaining these significantly extended lifespans?
Yes. Yeah. And, Richard, I've had contact with extraterrestrials years ago in the physical. And I've had many, many downloads over the years, which has helped me to develop some of the technologies that I've developed and other things. And so I've been told a lot of things about this. For example, now, these secret space program whistleblowers are coming out like Corey Good and Emery Smith and others saying that, these extraterrestrial lifespans range from hundreds of years to thousands of years. Mm-hmm. How can they do that? Well, part of the reason they can do that is because their bodies aren't toxic like ours are.
Yeah.
Because
we're not in a rest home for the last 1,000 years.
Right. But part of the reason that they can do that is because they're ingesting large amounts of monoatomic elements in their diet, in natural forms, of course, but also perhaps in man-made forms, if you want to call it that. No, I wouldn't say synthetic forms, but in concentrated forms. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I've been teaching for many, many years to grow food and vortex your water and magnetic fields and things to get these monoatomic elements in your body in larger doses. And now I'm actually even recommending small doses of the Vancouver Island Ormus, maybe a teaspoon a day or so, but no more than that. And we can get into why not in a minute, but because we need it with all these increasing threats to our health, like 5G wireless and stuff. And but the relationship with the pyramids and these kings living long periods of times. First of all, some of these kings may not have been human. Mm-hmm. Because if you look at the archaeological evidence, when you look at Egyptian hieroglyphics and others, you've got men with dog heads and serpent heads and dragon beings and all kinds of stuff. And I know my wife is Chinese from Taiwan, and I've been to China and seen there's a lot of dragon symbology in their culture and a lot of snake symbology. And in my experience, having some, let's say, unusual experiences in China, in being in meditative states that were like kind of altered states, one of the things I came to realize is the Chinese, the reason that the reptilian influence is so strong in their cultural symbology is because China has been historically for thousands of years a large reptilian extraterrestrial portal. And so there's this influence. But the ETs or humans, in order to, if they're going to maintain a long life like that, and also there are stories in China of people they call the immortals living hundreds of years or more as well. And I've met gurus and swamis who have studied with some of these people that reportedly live hundreds of years. Mm-hmm. And they're living in very pristine environments, usually in the Himalayas or somewhere like that. They're meditating in caves for 12 hours, 14 hours a day. They have a very, very simple life. They're ingesting high Ormus food. They're drinking high Ormus water. And they're doing these meditative practices to continually purify their mind and their bodies. And so I would think that these kings that lived for these reportedly hundreds or more years probably were doing all of that. They were, ingesting monoatomic elements. They were also in a much cleaner environment back in those days as far as toxins go. Mm-hmm. They probably had advanced technologies like pyramid technology. They were using basically scalar wave technology to help them maintain their health. What pyramids do, depending on the size of them, if they're little pyramids, you can have them around you. They put out scalar fields because they're little antennas that pick up energy coming from the sun and from the center of the earth, and they rebroadcast it in a local area. So if you've got a pyramid made of the right materials and tuned to the right frequencies, that will enhance your life. I mean, that's what my rest shield devices and my home shield devices do. Yeah. They put out these scalar fields, de-stresses you, and so your body naturally regenerates more when you sleep.
That's like a 20-foot radius of those.
Yeah, for the rest shield, the little pyramid we sell, that's a 20-foot radius. The home shield has more like a 100-foot radius for
and they're
EMF.
Strongest near the center, and then they have less and less power as you go out.
Right. And so, in the case of the home shield, it also reaches out 75 miles for clearing pollution out of the atmosphere, like chemtrails and nuclear fallout and that kind of stuff. But for EMF and for health and plant growth and those kinds of things, I say 100-foot radius. It's really more than that. But
is it okay to put the home shield next to your bed if you want to?
No, it's too strong for that.
Okay.
We've had a few people try that, and they call us up like, I want to return this thing. It's making me dizzy or whatever. Like, what are you doing with it? Well, I got it on my nightstand. I was like, oh, heck no. You don't want to do that. It's too strong. Too much of a good thing.
What's a minimum safe distance?
About 20, 30 feet. Some people like me, I've been around, I've had these things all around my house for years. So I'm adapted to it. So I can get right up over it for whatever length of time. It doesn't bother me. I've met gurus. Like we've got a guy in Dallas who's a guru, and he's got all these students that he teaches. And he has 2 of them inside of his house, 2 of the home shields. And they use it for their meditation practices because it accelerates manifestation of whatever you're focused on, and it improves meditation.
Okay.
So
that's very interesting.
Yeah. So with this king list and these immortal kings, they probably have, different kinds of scalar devices. Like, for example, the Ankh. The Ankh is actually a scalar wave antenna. Ibrahim.
So you don't have to plug it in or anything either, right?
Exactly. It's a static antenna. Just like an antenna. You can take a piece of wire, whatever length, and that is an antenna. It picks up different types of energy of the frequency of the length of that piece of wire. So that's how simple an antenna can be. And so an Ankh or other shapes, they're what are called fractal antennas, where they can pick up different frequencies based on the length of the segments and shapes of the parts of that shape. And so Dr. Ibrahim Karim, who was an Egyptian archaeology professor, he discovered this when he was studying Egyptian artifacts and writing. And what he found out was that the Egyptian hieroglyphs, actually, the letters are actually scalar wave antennas themselves. And so the Egyptian alphabet actually is a series of scalar wave antennas that emit energy. And so he used that concept to develop these little metal shapes that look like Egyptian hieroglyphs that have all kinds of benefits. And he and I worked together on a project for a cannabis grower in Canada who wanted to grow the absolute best medical marijuana. And so they used his technology and my technology in these pyramid-shaped greenhouses to grow, and Ormus also, to grow insanely nutrient-dense cannabis. So, so you can do the same thing, to protect yourself and have longevity. Build small pyramids, build large pyramids. I'm actually going to have a pyramid building workshop here at my house in Florida with Russian pyramid scientist Valery Uvarov in April of 2020. So if you get on my mailing list, then you'll be notified when we get that all the details on our website.
You're going to try to film it and have that available after?
We're going to film it, yeah, absolutely. We're going to film it and teach people how to build pyramids, because we need to become pyramid builders again. People need to understand this technology and this physics and utilize it for themselves, because when you got things like chemtrails coming down on you and nuclear fallout and now 5G, you're going to need to take extraordinary measures to keep yourself healthy. And pyramids and Ormus are going to be 2 major parts of that equation. And when you understand, if you do build pyramids, you can build them out of organite, you can build them out of wood, you can build them out of stone. I mean, you can do something as simple as piling up rocks in a pyramid shape or a cone shape in your yard and have the benefits of it. It doesn't have to be anything high tech.
Well, that wouldn't have exact ratios of measurements of sides and stuff, would it?
Well, if it's depending on the scale, let's say if you had rocks that were 6 inches in diameter and you built a pyramid 15 feet tall, it would be precise enough.
Really? Okay.
And I know it for a fact because I've had friends who've done that. They built pyramids and obelisks just out of stacked rock, and it improved their garden, that kind of stuff.
You want to orient the pyramid so that a flat face is facing straight magnetic north. Is that helpful?
Yeah, Sam Osmanagic talks about that. You can orient the sides, or you can orient one corner to true north, which is the rotational axis of the Earth, the north that represents, as opposed to magnetic north.
Okay, so the true north, the rotational axis, is the one that they use to pinpoint the north and south poles, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what Sam discovered with the Bosnian pyramid complex. They got all these different structures, including pyramids, and they're all oriented toward true north, not magnetic north, because magnetic north moves a lot over time.
True north is kind of stable, right?
Yeah, relatively. It does change when the Earth has a pole shift, and we may be getting close to a pole shift now, where the North and South poles flip. But that's being predicted that it could happen any time now, and that's part of the reason why magnetic north is bouncing around. But it's fairly
so
stable.
Actually, orienting a flat face toward magnetic north wouldn't last for long.
No, especially right now. I mean, airports have had to change their runway markings because magnetic north has changed so much. The compass heading has changed for aircraft landing.
One question about, you were talking about the home shield and the rest shield. They both use scalar energy, one on a larger radius than the other. Are they compatible? In other words, if you had a rest shield right next to a home shield, would they kind of merge into what they're putting out, or what happens?
Yeah, they actually enhance each other, kind of like, if you've got multiple guitars playing together as opposed to one guitar, it actually, they resonate with each other, and they increase the sound volume and the frequency and that kind of thing. So, yeah, they don't interfere with each other. They enhance each other.
All right. So one way to test if your own frequency and clarity had gotten to a certain point is, and I don't think this would be really dangerous, put a home shield close by and see how you react.
Yeah, it's the frequencies that it operates at, it's pretty complex because overall it's pulsing at the Schumann resonance. So it's got this pulse of 7.83 cycles per second that slows the brain and the nervous system down and de-stresses you. But then it's also got all these other resonant harmonics that are created from the circuit that's in these devices. It generates it generates two types of frequencies. It generates a very complex waveform that's actually a three-dimensional wave. It's not a conventional sine wave. I was taught in engineering school that, like electricity and energy flows in these waves that go up and down. Yeah. Well, they actually spiral. They don't just go up and down on a two-dimensional plane. They spiral. Okay. And the devices that we use to measure them, like oscilloscopes, go up and down. So
those are two-dimensional, yeah.
Right. But the only time waves go up and down like that is if they're being constrained in some way, like, waves at the beach, the water is being constrained by gravity. So it goes up and down.
As they get closer to the shore, yeah.
Yeah, if you just threw a bunch of water out in space, it would spiral, ultimately from the gravitational influences, if it was within proximity to any gravitational bodies. And so anyway, the energies that these things put out, they are spiraling. And so when you get in proximity to it, well, the complex waveform it's emitting is a 3D waveform. It's very complex. It's really weird. And quite honestly, we probably don't even have the right technology to measure it accurately.
Right.
We do our best with oscilloscopes and quantum biofeedback devices and GTV cameras and things like that. But we're probably it's probably like a blind man trying to describe an elephant.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And so we do the best we can, but it does have a very complex waveform that comes out of it. And then overall, it's pulsing on and off at 7.83 cycles. So there's a lot going on. And then the minerals in the resin that the antenna is embedded in, those also impart specific frequencies from those minerals. So there's a very complex harmonic going on there. And then there's power. It's like you can have a radio that broadcasts 20 feet. You can have a radio that broadcasts 200 miles. And if you get too close to too much power, it can be damaging to you. In the case of these devices, because of the frequencies and everything they use, they're not going to damage you, but they will, if you can't handle that amount of power, it might make you feel dizzy. I mean, that's the worst thing we've seen from somebody, is that it made them feel dizzy, or they had really bad dreams or something like that.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, for people that have done all the other stuff for a long time, what would the effect be of like starting to live right next to a home shield?
Well, like for me, for example, I can sit right next to it for hours and it doesn't bother me. And if I'm meditating, it will radically accelerate manifestation of what I'm focused on. And I also notice too that a lot more of my guides come in when I'm meditating with something like that.
So could you put it next to where you sleep and be okay?
Well, some people could. I'd say most people wouldn't, because most people most people aren't doing the kinds of things that I do, number one, and most people aren't surrounded by rest shields like I am.
Right.
You know, I've done a lot of stuff in my life to raise my frequency, if you want to say that. I've done a lot of detoxing and stuff, and I'm used to a lot of things. Like I can take mega doses of supplements that most people couldn't handle. Mm-hmm. So it's going to vary with the individual. But somebody who's, I would say, more enlightened and has done more stuff, working on themselves, could handle it better. And like I say, I've known a few people like that guru in Dallas who, he lives with two of them in his house all the time.
Wow, interesting. Somebody is asking, how can Ormus state minerals / shungite / scalar energy be used to support the transmutation of the body from one form of physical expression to another? And I don't know what they mean by that. And then somehow access the holographic blueprint we use to create our form to make massive changes, sort of like how David Icke says the reptilians are able to shift shapes due to the properties of monoatomic gold. Could the form of monoatomic gold from the Angstrom Minerals brand be used in this situation?
Okay, first of all, Angstrom minerals are not monoatomic. They're Angstrom. Angstrom means you've got just a few atoms of the element in a particle. So, for example, Angstrom copper typically has 12 atoms per particle. And those Angstrom particles are small enough to get into the cell membranes and feed them. They can go anywhere in the body, that water can go, and it can feed the cells and all of that. Monoatomics, of course, are the individual atoms that are not connected to each other, and they're in a very unusual state, and they're very highly energetic, and they really act like pyramids in the body. They're little scalar antennas, microscopic scalar antennas that pick up this scalar energy all around us and rebroadcast it in a local small field. Mm-hmm. So when you ingest them, they plug into the brain neural pathways, they plug into the nervous system along the acupuncture meridians, the nadis, they plug in the DNA. And so the more of that you've got going on, the more that you're going to manifest whatever you're focused on. Now, if you're here's the risk with these alchemical forms of Ormus or monoatomics, is that they are not in a natural state that the body is used to metabolizing, and so it can raise the superconductivity in the body too strong, too fast. And then what will happen is the mind-body connection gets strengthened so high, so fast, that you're not spiritually ready for it, and you will start manifesting things that you didn't intend. Because if you've got any fears or any issues and you're artificially raising the superconductivity in your body, you're accelerating your ability to manifest everything, good or bad.
Right.
And so I've always said, if you're not spiritually ready to ingest alchemical forms of Ormus, you shouldn't do it. And if you are spiritually ready, you don't need it. So therefore,
you're talking about forms like Vancouver Island Ormus and
right.
stuff.
So therefore, it's only been recently that I've been recommending small amounts of the Vancouver Island Ormus, because we've got to do something to protect ourselves against 5G. And a teaspoon a day of that stuff seems to be okay.
Have you checked out that doesn't have any residue of anything bad, even on a tiny scale that might affect you badly? Yes.
That is one of the first things I asked Kevin Hay, the guy who produces this stuff. Have you tested these, or do you test the seawater before you use it to make this stuff? And do you test it afterwards for heavy metals? And he does. He's got certification of that. He's got lab tests, and you can get them from them. Once we get it on our website, we'll have those lab tests posted.
What about the processing chemicals, the strong acids and stuff too?
Yeah, he. I think he uses the somewhat conventional method of what's called the wet method. So he probably uses lye. But Kevin is a really, really brilliant guy, and he's not going to leave any lye or anything like that in the substrate that's left. And in fact, when as with everything, I test everything before I ever recommend it or sell it. And so I've tested it. I haven't sent it off to a lab for heavy metals, but I have seen the reports from him on it, and I have tested it with quantum biofeedback, and it measures high up to a certain dose. Once you go over a certain amount, then like any supplement. You eat too much, you take too much of it, it can actually be detrimental. So a teaspoon a day, no more than 2 for some people, but I would say, just do a teaspoon a day. You'll see the benefits. You won't see any negative aspects of it.
And it's a white liquid like milk or something, right? That's what.
Yeah, it's kind of a milky, it's kind of a thick, milky liquid. It doesn't have much taste. It doesn't have much taste. But to answer the person's question as far as what you can do with ormus and shungite and all this kind of stuff,
right?
Shungite is a mineral that comes from Russia. It does come from a couple other places around the world, in China, I think, in Afghanistan. But the Karelian shungite from Russia seems to have the most ormus in it and put out the most scalar energy. Shungite is very much like zeolites in that it has a cage structure, and so you can use it for filtration or for extracting toxins out of stuff, or you can ingest it that way. Typically, you grind it up into a fine powder, and you can take it as a supplement. It's also like carbon-60. It's actually a natural form of carbon-60. And so, if you're concerned about using carbon-60 because it's a nanotechnology with nanoparticles, you can use shungite, which is a natural form. And it's been used for many, many years in water purification systems. So it's non-toxic. It's a known factor. It's high in ormus. It puts out scalar fields. You can use it for removing radiation from water or from the body and pulling out toxins. So it's a good supplement from that standpoint. But you can also, because it puts out scalar fields, you can make shapes out of it, like little pyramids or pendants. We're getting ready to sell shungite pendants, EMF pendants on our website, and those kinds of things. And so, you can take it and put it into orgonite if you are into making orgonite, which is a material where you use a resin like fiberglass or epoxy, and you can put metal powders and mineral powders into it and other structures, and you can make devices that will put out a scalar field to protect you against EMF and raise your frequency and that kind of stuff. But overall, I think what the person's asking is like, what can I do to raise my frequency and transcend this stuff? And also they were talking about in preparation for what sounds like ascension, what some people's idea that like what happens when we die, or, is this planet going to go through some process where we all ascend or whatever? And there's all kinds of different ideas about how that's going to manifest, if it does manifest. And to me, that kind of stuff is irrelevant as far as whether there's going to be an ascension or whatever. We will naturally ascend, depending on our level of consciousness, when we die, through many lifetimes. And if there is some kind of a transition process of Earth itself and us on it, then the best thing you can do, no matter what the circumstances are, in any time in history, past or present or future, is that the more that you become, the more aware you become, the more enlightened you become, the more light you get into your body, the more aware you become, the more you understand the nature of reality, the easier life becomes, and the more joy and abundance you have in your life, and the less suffering you have in your life. So my advice is to not only do these physical things like ingesting, ormus or these minerals and nutrients and detoxing the body. All of that is definitely a part of this. Live food, that's all a part of this. Keeping your physical vehicle cleaned out and detoxed as much as possible. Keeping it from being exposed to hazardous fields like EMF and stuff like that. Protecting yourself as much as possible. But then I think much more important is to do the internal work, the spiritual work, to expand your understanding of the nature of reality. Because, when you meet truly enlightened people, when you meet these swamis and gurus and masters who really have amazing lives where they seem to just magically manifest amazingly, an amazing life, and you want those kinds of things for yourself, what you've got to do is find out what those practices are that got them there. And so there are many teachers out there that teach that kind of stuff. And so lately, the two that I'm going to India that I'm going to be studying with is this guy named Sadhguru, Sadhguru. He's got tons and tons and tons of videos on YouTube. He's got online courses in how to do this stuff to attain enlightenment, and he has in-person courses all around the world, including in the U.S., And so you can go and study with a master like that who has attained a level of enlightenment that is extremely impressive from our viewpoint and standard of living.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm very impressed just at how well, not only how balanced this guy is and how happy he appears to be and how committed to helping the planet he is, but how well he's been able to manifest his organization to create that influence around the world. You know, he's not like out there brainwashing people and getting people into any kind of dogma or worship me or anything like that. He's just sharing this knowledge of what all these enlightened people throughout history from different walks of life and different belief systems have done to attain enlightenment, and why you want to do that. You know, ultimately the reason you want to do that is so you don't suffer, so that you enjoy life, so you have a good life. And
where in India is he?
He is in it's a smaller town that I don't remember the name of, but it's in, I believe, southern India.
Okay.
Seems like it starts with an M, but at any rate, he's got centers all over India and all over the world. He says that he's got like 9 million volunteers all around the world helping his organization. There's a foundation called the Isha Foundation, ISHA, that helps to propagate his work. I guess they take care of the nuts and bolts, things like websites and, all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
But it's very impressive to me, just as a businessman, to see how really well he has structured his business. And I say business because the guy's very ethical. He gives most of his stuff away for free. He doesn't charge much money for the things that he does charge. I mean, I bought like 6 of his books on everything from a raw food recipe book to, how to end suffering for like $2 a piece.
Wow.
So a very, very ethical person. But he also recognizes we're living in a physical world where we've got, monetary systems and slavery systems and all that. And so he works within the framework of our current world to get this knowledge and information out to people. And then the other guy that I'm going to be studying with in India is Maharshi Pari. That's Moharshipari. He goes by the nickname Padriji. And his website, if you Google Pyramid Spiritual Society Movement, you'll find his website. And of course, he's got lots of videos on YouTube as well. But these guys, they were actually business people. Both of them were business people and quite successful before they attained enlightenment. And Sadhguru says it happened to him completely unexpectedly when he was 25 years old. He just happened to go on vacation somewhere, and he was sitting on the side of a mountain, and he had this altered state come over him, and he thought it lasted about 10 minutes. It turned out it lasted 7 hours. And then he had episodes like this where he would go into this altered state and think it was only lasting for a few minutes, and it would be hours or days or weeks. And so it kind of, however that came about, I guess it was probably a karmic thing where he was, supposed to do that. He'd
already done the work, yeah.
Yeah, but that's how it happened for him. He said he was not seeking enlightenment or any kind of spiritual activities. He was a businessman. He was arrogant and, but he was successful. And same thing with Padriji. He was a businessman, very successful. And he started reading and started studying, and of course they both, being in India, they're surrounded by all these gurus and things. So very practical people. And all of the gurus that I've met, there's another one that I'm a big fan of, I've studied with Guru Nath Siddhanath. What is his name? Yogi Raj, Guru Nath Siddhanath. And I'm not going to spell that, but I'll just tell you his website. It's siddhanath.com, I believe it is. It might be .org or .net, but it's SIDDHANATH, Siddhanath. He is one of the most powerful beings I've ever encountered, including extraterrestrials I've encountered. He's an amazing being. He can do all kinds of supernatural stuff, but he's also very grounded and very down to earth. And he started out, he was just another guy like us. He's just another person who went to college and went into business, and then, just longed for learning about the real nature of reality and started studying and attained enlightenment. So, but ultimately all this spiritual stuff, it's not about being holy. It's about understanding the nature of reality so that you can be happy. That's really all it is.
Yeah, exactly. And you can understand why people are all after different kinds of drugs, because they want the same thing. They just don't know how to do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Somebody asked about Sasha Stone's video on the 5G BioShield from Switzerland. And it's super expensive, but, it's just a little USB thing that you plug into a computer or something. And what do you think about that?
I haven't tested it yet, but I suspect it's probably, from what I hear, it's based on Tesla technology. So I suspect that it probably works, but I doubt it's as powerful as my devices, because I haven't seen anything, particularly that small, that can generate a scalar field strong enough to truly protect you sufficiently against 5G.
Yeah. I saw one of them, and it cost $1,000.
Oh, that's crazy. That's way too expensive. I mean, I'll be coming out with my stress shield again, and for $150, it probably would do the same thing. Right. And I can't say for certain because I haven't tested it. Yeah. And suppose it was developed by some Russian scientists who know what they're doing. But I hear that a lot. I hear scientific types and doctors and stuff who think that they've got the latest, greatest thing since sliced bread, and it's actually pretty weak because that's all they know.
Well, and they're going to be a trillionaire as soon as they sell a bunch of them too.
Yeah, well, and they're probably ethical people. From what I hear, they just they haven't turned it into a business, so they don't make many of them. So they have to hand make them, and therefore the production costs are high.
Sure.
But Sasha Stone is a great guy, and he's a friend of mine, and anything he would recommend, I would trust. So I'm sure it's a good device. But as far as is it worth the money compared to other things you can get on the market or my stuff, I don't know, but I would suspect not.
Okay, somebody's asking.
I'm going to get in touch, by the way, with Sasha Stone this week about that very thing, because
that would be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he doesn't know about my technology.
Yeah, ask him, because he really was promoting this on a video that I saw. I forget exactly what it was. Something about a 5G apocalypse thing.
Yeah, 5G
related specifically to BioShield.
Yeah, I have that video posted on my blog at Fresh and Alive blog. It can be hard to find on YouTube because they've been suppressing it. When it first came out, you could find it no problem if you search on Sasha Stone.
That's 5G. Usually a good sign. It means they agree it's good.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the same thing with my 5G video. I did a 2.5-hour video on how to protect yourself against 5G, and it's definitely getting suppressed on YouTube. YouTube, not only have they been suppressing our search results, but they're actually removing people from our subscription list.
They like to do that.
People have been telling us that they're getting removed when they don't. They're not.
They all can also like to make your view counter go back to 0.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of fun.
So, it doesn't work. And we're expanding to other video platforms. So,
Right, you need to do that. Brighteon's one of the good ones too.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk to you about that too later, because I'm going to be getting on Brighteon. But for people that, if you're interested in Sasha's video, it's on my blog at freshandaliveblog.com.
Yeah.
And also, I know Gaia TV, or what used to be Gaia TV, Gaia.com, they've been recommending, I think, that USB device for 5G and some other stuff that's really, really weak. So they don't really know about real solutions. And I mean, I was on their program, and apparently they've forgotten. So I'm going to have to get in touch with them and remind them that, as far as I know, my technology is the strongest thing out there for protecting against EMF.
What about your quantum balance crystal pendants on your website? This one person says, I have a few of them. I'm interested to know more about what they do and how they work.
Okay, it actually tells you on the website, on those product pages, how it works. But basically, the quantum balance crystal, like many of these EMF protection devices that are made out of some kind of resin or plastic or something like that, they just take a material like that, in this case it's a plant-based resin, and they put quartz nanocrystals in the resin. And so the quartz nanocrystals are what actually put the scalar field out. And the scalar field, because it's of natural frequency from quartz, it will structure electromagnetic radiation. See, normally EM waves, whether it's television, radio, or airport radar guns or whatever, all these different sources. This stuff is zooming around through our atmosphere all over the place, and it's reflecting off of surfaces. And when it gets to you, depending on where you're at, it may be bouncing off of walls and objects and coming at you from all different directions. And so those waves are coming in at you from all these different directions, and that interferes with cellular communication in the body. The cells are trying to communicate with radio frequencies, with scalar waves, with sound frequencies, and electrochemical impulses and different types of energies. And so that EMF is like static on a radio station. So, if there's not much static, it's not a big deal. But if it gets to be too loud, then you can't hear the station. And so if the cells are trying to talk to each other and signal each other, and then there's this loud interference, and they can't communicate, then you wind up with major diseases. And so when you create a scalar field of the right frequency or the right strength, then when those waves hit, they'll become parallel. And so when they're passing through your body, they're all passing through from one direction, and that radically reduces the amount of noise that they create. It's kind of like a stealth fighter coming into radar. It's got a much lower profile. So that's how all these EMF protectors that's how they work. And then there's another technology. There's a couple other technologies like natural stones, like shungite. They're naturally high in ormus. Their atomic structure and molecular structure puts out a scalar field in combination with the ormus hiding inside of the mineral. That puts out a scalar field and acts the same way. Or you have other technologies like we have the Amora pendants on our website, where they just take a nut from South America called tagua, and they just slice it into little slices so it's pendant shaped. And then they bombard it with scalar waves, and that alters the geometry of the nuclei of the atoms of the material. And so it doesn't chemically change the material, but it just simply alters the geometry of the subatomic particles in the nucleus of the atoms. And so the nuclei act like little microscopic scalar wave antennas that picks up this scalar energy all around us. Some people call it 0-point energy at that scale. And then those little microscopic antennas rebroadcast that field and create a field around the material. And so you'll see pendants made out of glass or metal or other things. That's basically how they're structured. But they all do the same thing. They put out a scalar field. It creates quantum coherence that structures the EMF and makes it less damaging. But it's not. It doesn't give you carte blanche to blast yourself with EMF.
Right. So if you're wearing a pendant like the QBC one that you guys have, how is there a way to describe how much that would protect you against the 5G that's coming?
Well, in my test, that is not going to protect you at all against 5G to speak of. I mean, it protects you a little bit, but in general, 5G is so powerful and so strong and so pervasive that
and it's directed, right? It's focused.
Right. It's beamforming, what they call beamforming. So sending these, these pointed beam signals.
It's like a Star Trek stun gun or something, right?
Right. And so it's not like a weak field. And so you've got to do everything in your power. You've got to wear pendants. You've got to have devices like mine that put out scalar fields to protect you. You've got to have shielding. You've got to strengthen your immune system and protect your body by, eating right, detoxing the body, getting toxins out, getting nutrients in, strengthening the immune system, or in particular, strengthening the brain and the nervous system. So, for example, E3 Live blue-green algae from Klamath Lake, very, very powerful at doing that. You've got to do everything. Ormus, taking in Ormus. That's why I created a 2.5-hour video on YouTube of what to do to protect yourself against 5G. You're going to have to do everything in your power to keep yourself protected and healthy when you're immersed in this ocean of massive EMF.
Yeah, even if you've got protective fields in your house, you might have to go out of your house sometime, right?
Yeah, I mean, and don't buy into the Internet of Things. Don't have smart appliances scattered all around your house, sending these signals all around.
Yeah, I know they're going to try to make it impossible to get non-smart appliances or non-smart cars.
Right, it'll be like organic food. You'll be able to get them, but they'll cost you a lot more.
Yeah, exactly.
And it'll be ridiculed, in the same way that, that's all nonsense, blah, blah, blah. It's non-ionizing radiation. There's no evidence, blah, 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 even though there's thousands of studies, including, by the way, the military. They've done their own studies showing specifically that millimeter wave technology, which is what 5G is very damaging to their soldiers. So they opted out of it for applications in the military.
Here's somebody that says, can you talk about also heavy metal detox? I've been working on super high lead levels as well as somewhat elevated mercury levels. I think he mentioned something that he puts in his eyes, but I don't remember if that was for HM detox or something else. Any recommendations for testing? ? I've been using the 6-hour urine challenge and have made significant progress over the almost 2 years I've been working on it. Any suggestions?
Yeah, as with anything, you have to take a comprehensive approach. So, number one, living foods diet, high in chlorophyll, proper food combining, not combining proteins with starches and sugars and fruit and that kind of stuff. So, no, raw vegan protein bars and that kind of junk. And lots of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is really good at pulling metals out of the body, especially cilantro and parsley. Like every day, I make a green drink where I use cucumber and celery as a base, and I put in parsley and tomato and red bell pepper and other greens, sometimes kale or whatever. But the red bell pepper and the tomato kind of cuts the gag factor of the green. Wheatgrass juice is phenomenal, and you can grow it yourself for pennies. And that's really good. Any kind of dense chlorophyll, marine phytoplankton is good. Chlorella is really good. Mike Adams has a good chlorella that's been tested to make sure it's not radioactive or contaminated with heavy metals. And then the product he was talking about, advanced TRS. It's the brand name is Coseva, COSEVA. Advanced TRS. It's a nano zeolite product. We sell it on our website at freshonalive.com. And that is a laboratory-made zeolite that what zeolites are is a mineral that is created when lava hits water, either ocean water or underground water. And it shocks the rock, and it creates these mineral structures that look like little microscopic geodesic balls. And those geodesic balls have a very strong negative charge inside of them. And so some people will take that rock and grind it up into a very fine powder and sell it as a supplement. And that can be fine if the company's reputable and they make sure that they use a clean source that hasn't picked up any toxins. Mm-hmm. And if the zeolites themselves pick up toxins and lock it into their cage structures, it's not a problem because even if you ingest it, it's not going to release it into the body.
Right.
But for companies that are like I've seen people like on eBay selling zeolites that were mined for agricultural purposes and they weren't food grade and they might have other toxins in there that are not necessarily locked up in the zeolite. And then that can get into the body.
A lot of complaints about them having aluminum, I think.
Well, zeolites themselves are aluminosilicates, and so Mike Adams, he threw a lot of doubt onto zeolites because he put out an article saying, Mike's a really wonderful guy, and I love him, and he's been very kind to me, so I don't ever want to say anything negative about him. He's a really, really good guy, and he does a lot of good for the world. Yeah. But he's not a scientist. He's not trained in the scientific method, and he's not trained to think particularly the way somebody like me thinks. I'm not even trained like a normal scientist. I don't think like a normal scientist. But he's got some money, and he's got a really fancy assaying machine that he can take materials and assay them and figure out what's in them. So he took zeolites from some cheap company, and they were the mined, crushed, powdered zeolites, and analyzed it and found there were all these toxins in there. And then what he did was he dissolved. The way that you use this machine is you take the material and you dissolve it in a strong acid, and then you analyze what constituents are in there. Well, you can't do that because, number one, zeolites by themselves, even if they're pristine, they're aluminosilicates. So if you dissolve them in acid, you break them down, you're going to get aluminum, you're going to get, certain elements showing up in the analysis. So he did that. And then there were probably other toxins in there. And then he goes, oh my God, zeolites are toxic. Well, you can't draw that conclusion from that kind of analysis.
Because they don't release it.
No, they lock them up. Now, if it was a cheap zeolite product that had other toxins not locked into the zeolite cages, then yes, that would be a valid conclusion, but you have to have other types of analysis to make that determination. He just dissolved these things and said, oh, look at all this stuff in the dissolved solution, they're toxic.
Yeah.
It's not correct. Zeolites have been around for at least 800 years. They've been ingested by human beings for about 800 years, and they're well known to be non-toxic if they're harvested, mined properly. And not all of them are. So, you got to be careful about that. But the Cosiva product, you don't even have to worry about that because they're laboratory made, so there's no risk of any contamination at all in the cages or outside of them.
Okay.
But for example, Amica has a good powdered zeolite that is made from natural minerals, and they do test it for all of that stuff. And it's a good product. I sold it for many years and I used it for many years, but once I found the advanced TRS, I realized there's no need for any other zeolite because what they've done with this laboratory form is made individual discrete cages of zeolite in water. So where, if you take zeolite rocks and you grind them up, even if you grind them up very, very fine, you're still going to have thousands of cages per particle of zeolite, and they won't go anywhere in the body. Right. They can only go into the GI tract of the body and pull stuff out of the GI tract. Yeah. These advanced TRS, because they're individual cages, they're angstrom sized, they can actually go anywhere in the body that water can go. So
that's the Cosiva one, right?
Right, the Cosiva. Okay. And it's the only product I know of that's like this.
Okay.
I spray it in my eyes every morning, one spray in each eye. I spray 3 sprays in my mouth, one spray in each eye, and that will go into the brain. And this has been proven, by the way, by Cosiva. They've had great success with autism because of this, because autism most often is caused by heavy metals depositing in the brain and short-circuiting pathways. Right. So spraying it in the eyes, it'll go into the brain, pull heavy metals out of the brain, including mercury. And then you spray it in the mouth, it goes through the body, and it will pull metals out of the body. That's been extremely effective, especially long-term. So along with food and diet and chlorophyll and herbs, I also, along with fresh herbs and juices daily, you can also use, Dr. Morse. I use Dr. Morse's herbal extracts for detoxing, and along with those nanozeolites. And all of that works phenomenally well for getting metals out of your body. And I know it can be done because I had mercury poisoning. I've had copper toxicity, massive copper toxicity from copper plumbing, and mercury poisoning from my fillings for many years. It gets it all out.
Does it take aluminum out too?
It'll take aluminum out. It'll take any heavy metal out, and it doesn't remove. Beneficial minerals and elements from the body, because one thing that heavy metals and pathogens have in common with the body is they have a positive charge. So there's certain ways you can target pathogens and toxins, and one of those ways is by charge. So the zeolites have a strong negative charge at the center of their cages. These toxins have, and not just metals, but other toxins as well, chemical toxins, pathogens, they've got a positive charge. So the zeolites will lock onto them. Then the charge neutralizes and they can't get out of the cage, and then it gets flushed out of the body.
And that would seem to include even living, microparasites and things like that.
And even viruses, even bacteria.
Does Cosiva come as a liquid?
Yes, it's a spray.
How expensive is it?
I think it's like $63 a bottle, and one bottle will last. If you're doing a heavy metal cleanse, it'll probably last you 3-4 weeks if you're doing a lot of it. I mean, and you can't do too much of it now. Here's the thing. You don't want to be taking more than what they recommend, which I think typically is 5 sprays per day. Do not go over that, because zeolites can be very dehydrating to the body. And years ago, I was using a different kind of zeolite. I was using another brand, which I won't mention, because when I mention brands, I get lawyer letters threatening to sue me. Right. But it was a very popular zeolite product at the time, and it still is out there. And I was taking the recommended elevated dosages. They recommend taking 3 times the normal dose for the first 10 days, which I did. And at the end of the 10 days, I heard Gabriel Cousens was recommending higher doses of it. So I thought, oh, okay. And I raised my dosage. And I was supposed to drop it back down after 10 days.
Oh, okay.
Well, within a few days of raising that dose, I started feeling like I was going to have a heart attack, and it wouldn't go away.
Wow.
24/7. I felt like I was going to have a heart attack at any moment. So I immediately, of course, stopped the zeolites, and I started doing large amounts of juice and water to flush it out of me. And it took a week before that went away.
Wow.
Now, I've never had anything like that happen with the Coseva, but I've never done massive doses of it. So I just tell you, with any zeolite product, do what they recommend. Do not do what they recommend.
Well, you say you do one spray in each eye every day. Does that last a month for a bottle if you do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes longer.
Okay. And it sounds like it's safe. Also, you have something I'm trying to get through these. A person says, I would like to know more about his uses for the azomite mineral powder. The directions on the bag say to use it for animals. I'm trying to use it for plants to feed them minerals. Would I just add it to the water that I water them with, or mix it with the soil, etc.?
You can just sprinkle it on the soil, and I believe that we mentioned, that it can be used for plants on our website.
Okay.
But I used to actually take it myself. I would take a tablespoon or two per day, and then when I got a water vitalizer, I started throwing all my supplements, including that, into my vitalizer and vortexing it for 27 minutes, which would break it down and make it more bioavailable. Now I just use Angstrom minerals and the concentrates for me personally. But for plants, two ways you can use it. You can put it on the soil and then put microbes down, like effective microorganisms. We sell a product called SCD ProBio Balance that, you just mix a small amount, like a couple of tablespoons in a gallon of water, and you water your plants with that, with the rock powders. And the microbes will eat the rock powders and break them down and into angstrom and monoatomic particles, which the plants will uptake. Okay. And then if you really want to know about how to do that, not just with azomite, but in general with rock powders, there's a really wonderful book called The Enlivened Rock Powders by Harvey Lisle, Lisle. And that's a great book that covers all these different rock powders that you can use. And I'll tell you an interesting little story about rock powders. Years ago, David Wolf, the big raw food guru.
Right.
We were hanging out and at a raw food conference, and we were talking about rock powders. And he pulls out his phone and he shows me this picture where he had taken 18 different rock powders. This is when he read that book, The Enlivened Rock Powders. He took every rock powder in that book, 18 of them, and put them on his crops on his farm in Hawaii. And he was growing purple corn, and which is, an heirloom variety of corn. Yeah. And the soil was so high in ormus, the plants uptook it, and his corn, which was extremely healthy, the rows on the corn, the kernels of the corn and the rows, they didn't go straight. They spiraled around the cob of the corn.
Wow.
Mind-blowing.
And what did he put on that soil to do that?
He did 18 different rock powders. He did probably mushroom compost, effective microorganisms. He did everything. He did a slew of stuff.
How do you spell Lisle? Harvey?
Lisle.
Okay.
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon.
Okay.
But that's the kind of results you can get. He probably was using seaweed and other things as well, knowing David, because he probably pulled out all the stops and put everything on there.
Yeah.
But that's an indication that those ears of corn were so high in superconductivity, they were following the natural spiral flow that this energy flows through the cosmos. This energy comes from the centers of galaxies, and it spirals and it branches as it goes, and it flows through the whole cosmos. It's relayed through the whole cosmos through these various structures, like the planets and the suns and our bodies. We're scalar wave antennas. Plants are all scalar wave antennas. Molecules, atoms, all these different structures at different scales of the universe are fractal antennas that pick up this energy and rebroadcast it.
Right.
So that ear of corn was an antenna picking up that signal, and because the energy is spiraling, it molded itself to the spiral structure of that energy.
It's interesting how the scales are all reflecting the same thing, and if you could look at one atom, it would probably look like a universe if you could see it up close.
Well, that's precisely what Nassim Haramein is proving, that what he calls the Planck particle inside of the nuclei of atoms, and the protons themselves inside the atoms, they're what they are, energetic structures that are basically like little universes.
Yeah, that's what you'd expect.
Mm-hmm.
Here's somebody who's dealing with a really specific situation with what they call a macular hole. Just had surgery to repair a detached retina, and was told that they have a macular hole in the eye, and the doctor said there's a bunch of scar tissue around the hole preventing it from closing. He did try to repair it when he attached the retina. So I said, so if the scar tissue is reabsorbed, then maybe the hole would close spontaneously. And he said, well, that's never going to happen, and wants to go in, and nice to be sure about stuff, and wants to go back in and surgically clean it up, in quotes, cutting a bunch of other stuff. This would mean another 6 to 8 week recovery period with restrictions that I mentioned, not picking the head up and stuff like that. And no guarantees at all it would restore vision, even if the hole was closed. Anyway, I'm seeking alternative energetic approaches to healing the scar tissue on the macula. That's pretty delicate in there. And so I've done visualization of the scar tissue being cleaned up through autophagy, cells eating junk in your body. I totally know the body can heal itself, and I just have to figure out how. Looking for ideas.
Right. Now, I cannot give you any kind of advice that would countermand your doctor's
exactly.
advice, so
please go get all the drugs from the doctor immediately.
Yeah, do what your doctor says, or find a doctor that is more in line with what you're seeking. But I'll tell you what I have done with clients that worked well in conditions like that, where they had eye injuries. First of all, everything we've already been talking about here. Living foods, 100% living foods diet, proper combinations, high in chlorophyll, dense nutrients, superfoods. Find out if you're deficient in any minerals. In particular, minerals are what build the structures of the body. That's what the body's structures are made of. So if you're deficient in minerals, particularly as you get older, you get more and more mineral deficient, and then that's why things heal up a lot slower. So getting big concentrations of minerals into the body, particularly in food-based forms, will help accelerate healing of any kind, number one. And so, along with these products that we've been talking about, like blue-green algae, for example, E3 Live, really good one, but also a good multivitamin mineral overall is a product called Intramax, I-N-T-R-A Max, M-A-X, from Drucker Labs. That's a really phenomenal multivitamin mineral nutrient product that I would be taking big doses of. And big doses for me would be 2 capfuls of that stuff per day. And it's not cheap. It's about $80 a bottle, which normally if you take 1 cap a day, that'll last you a month. So, I'm talking about $80 every 2 weeks.
Right.
Staying alkaline, getting dense nutrients. Other things that will help immensely if you can get access to a quantum biofeedback practitioner. Quantum biofeedback, particularly the QXCI SCIO, which is SCIO, or the newer version of that technology, the Eductor, or EDUCTOR. I believe it's quantumalliance.com is their website, I believe. If you go to my website at freshandalive.com, on the services page, I have links to them. And SCIO practitioners and quantum biofeedback practitioners. But that device is not a curative device, and it's not a diagnostic device. It's not been FDA approved for any of that. Right. But what it will do is measure stressors on the body, and it can give you a lot of detailed insight into, what is stressing the body and what's affecting the body. These practitioners, like any practitioner, some are better than others. So you can contact the Quantum Alliance and see if they can recommend somebody in your area who would be good at that. Once you've been hooked up to those machines, they can actually send energy into your body. I mean, when you're doing a session in Purpose, it will read the subatomic energetic structure of the body. It can analyze it in a way that and compare it with known values to see what's going on in the body, but can also send scalar energy into the body to help support healing. And I've seen amazing results with that. So that's something that could, along with everything else, will help. And then there's a product on the market called Liquid Manna. And you can go to liquidmanna, MANNA.com, and they've got a water product it's a scalar energized. Basically, what it is Ormus water that's been programmed with scalar frequencies. And I know that the wife of the guy who invented that stuff, who's now dead, his son is carrying on the company. But the guy, his wife, used that. She was blind in one eye, and she had an acute injury to her eye, like 18 years. And she started putting that in her eye 5 times a day, and after a few months, she regained her vision in that eye. Okay. So that stuff is very regenerative. Now, it's not, FDA approved as an ocular product. So I can't actually tell you to put that in your eye. I'm just telling you what happened with his.
Yeah. Do you know if it's expensive stuff?
No, it's not expensive. I think it's like $30 a bottle or something like that. And if you're using it. Like I put it in my eyes. I've never had a problem with it, and it lasts a long, long time. 1 bottle of that stuff. You can also drink it, by the way, too. It's very alkalizing to the body and regenerative to the body. And then, again, Sherry Edwards sound technology. If you can find any practitioners in your area that you can work with, that technology also accelerates cellular regeneration. Right. What you want to be focused on is cellular regeneration. That regenerates anything, in the body.
No, as opposed to getting rid of scar tissue, you mean?
Well, the scar tissue will naturally go away when you regenerate cells. This is the thing. This is something I discovered years ago when I started doing this stuff. And I learned cellular regeneration from Dr. Morse. And he's got a great book on it, by the way, called the Detox Miracles Source Book. That's a bit of a misnomer, because the book is not just about detoxing. It's really about cellular regeneration. You can get that book on Amazon for $30 or something. But basically, by getting dense nutrients into the body and detoxing the body and getting these metals and toxins and things out of the body that put a load on the immune system can strengthen, and then it will heal things faster, but it will also regenerate cells. And so I noticed between like that and having a rest shield around, I noticed that scars on my body were going away. Okay. And also, as far as scars go, now not on the eye, but on the body, you can take the scalar energized iodine that we sell, and you can put that directly onto scars on the surface of the body, and then rub in, actually put castor oil first on the scar, and then put that scalar energized iodine, it's called Alive Iodine, on the scar, and then rub it really, really vigorously with massage tools or gua sha tools, something like that, and break up that scar tissue, and it will go away. So on the eye, obviously you can't be sitting there rubbing the eye and doing all that, but you can. There are herbs that you can, herbal juices and extracts that you can put into the eye. Dr. Morse has several. For example, he's got blends that include eye bright and stuff like that. And you need to talk to his office and find out if you can do that, because right after surgery, it's going to be very, very tender and all of that. So you don't want to be putting anything in there that could cause you problems. But these are the kinds of things that I've seen that have worked with other people.
Okay. There's also a bunch of people asking about if they have white hair and baldness. Is there any suggestion for getting hair to regrow and to regain its color if it's already gray or white?
Yes, that's another one that Dr. Morse taught me. He's phenomenal at getting people to regrow hair, and I've also helped people that were bald regrow hair. Normally, baldness is a thyroid problem, and so it can be genetic. There's usually people that get bald early in life. Usually, there's genetic weakness there. And you can reverse genetic weaknesses. Genetic weaknesses are just the weaknesses that your parents passed on to you, but you can revert them by doing all these things we've been talking about, strengthening the body, and you can actually change your genetics. And I know this for a fact because I've done it myself. But with baldness, you want to work on the thyroid, in particular the adrenals, and the endocrine system in general. And so Dr. Morse's herbs, he's got tissue and organ-specific herbal extract blends specifically for doing that, and he's got detox programs for doing that. And you can email me through freshandalive.com on our contact page, and I can send you information that I've written up already about using Morse's herbal extracts. But basically, you've got to feed the body, feed the glands, detox the glands, and heal them up. And as you do that, the baldness will go away. You'll feel better. You have more energy. A whole slew of things will improve.
Right.
I've had people do this. There was a guy, for example, who came to me with prostate cancer years ago when I was doing consultations, and he got rid of the cancer. But one of the side effects was he was bald and his hair regrew. And when I first saw him after a year or so, when he regrew his hair, I didn't even recognize him because I was so used to seeing him. That makes a big difference, right? So you can absolutely regrow hair. Morse jokes around and says he can regrow hair on a bowling ball, but he's got a lot of experience doing it. So, between him and me, we can.
Does he do anything different than his general protocol for that? Do you know?
No, he just uses his herbal extracts and diet and food and, that kind of stuff.
Right.
I throw more things into the mix with that. And generally I've had my clients, sometimes when I would get busy or was traveling or whatever, I would tell clients to go to Morse, and they would go to him and do his protocols for a while, and then they would come back to me and they would tell me that my protocols work better. So not me bragging or anything, but in my experience, because I'm more aware of more things than Morse is, and I say that, I'd say other things in addition to Morse's stuff. Morse has mastered his techniques much more than me, so I don't want to disregard him in any way, but I just am aware of some other things that he's not aware of. And so I tend to get better results with my approach.
Yeah. I wonder what the being around the frequencies of the rest shield and the home shield would do on all that stuff.
I don't really think it would affect baldness per se or specific health issues. In my experience, because these things just de-stress you, the things that I've noticed that it does have an impact on is like relationhips. Because people tend to be calmer and more relaxed, and they don't get as wound up about things.
Right.
And because it relaxes the endocrine glands and the endocrine system and the adrenals, you do tend to see improvements in the endocrine system over a few months initially, but it just depends on how sick you are. If somebody's got really bad gland problems, it's not going to be, it's not going to do what needs to be done.
Yeah. I noticed with the quite a few people that I've run into that are fruitarians, they all lose their hair, which I think is really interesting. Maybe it's just, not that fruit is bad, but that if you only do that, maybe the sugar ratio is much too high or something like that. Well,
you're losing minerals and you're not getting those fat soluble vitamins with fruit. And,
right.
I know a lot of these raw food gurus behind the scenes. I've seen things that most people don't know. So Dr. Doug Graham, who I'm a big fan of, I love his work, but he promotes heavy fruit diets and stuff like that. And I know a lot of people who work for him, and I think even he himself, he's got some deficiencies in areas, and they don't talk about this stuff. I know the most prominent raw food people, the people who are running healing centers and stuff. And I know their doctors, I know some of their story behind the scenes, and I know they're not telling the truth about some of the health issues that they have because they based their whole income on it. I'll tell the truth about my experience. What works.
I think they have a hard time suddenly changing something if they learn that what they've been saying for years is actually not the best thing to do.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes from, wanting to be vegan, which I can understand. I wanted to be vegan for a long time. And
it's simpler. If you can just eat a piece of fruit once a week. And
I think it can be done,
but
not in our society typically around the planet. If we were growing our own food, like my grandmother did, and drinking natural water from a spring and those kinds of things, and eating our food, right, freshly picked and those kinds of things. Yeah, absolutely. We could probably be vegan, but
it's the general atmosphere of the planet too. I think has something to do with it.
Yeah, exactly. We've got so many things that are stressing us and poisoning us that I was not able to succeed on it after 18 years. And I'm no dummy. The only person I know of who is vegan, or at least publicly says he is, and I think he is, that as far as I know seems to be quite healthy, is Marcus Rothkranz.
Yeah.
But Marcus Rothkranz created a whole supplement line so that he could get what he needs to stay healthy.
Exactly.
And
I think
I
a
use
lot
his
of those people are
products.
trying to live on the supplements.
Right, and his supplements are all food based, and they're great. They're great.
Yeah.
I love them.
Yeah.
I use them, but they're damned expensive. And
Yeah.
it's not his fault. They're damned expensive. They're damned expensive because he uses
They're
good
good.
ingredients. And the
Yeah.
powers that be have penalized the organic food industry by making everything so costly. You know, the organic food industry has to go through all kinds of costs and certifications that chemical industry doesn't have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty interesting. So, but in general, all these things come down to very similar protocol, because the body doesn't heal differently depending on the diagnosis. It just heals or doesn't, right?
Exactly, and that's why, and people would ask me, how do you heal this disease or that disease or what or the other. There are some specifics sometimes, particularly if it's, really acute and people are close to death or something that you got to do to bring them back around. But in general, with whatever degenerative illness or issue it is, it's the same thing. It's detoxing the body. It's getting dense minerals into the body. And nowadays, there are convenience factors that can make that much easier, like energy medicine and superfoods and supplements and those kinds of things. And also because we've got these threats like nuclear fallout and GMOs and biowarfare agents and 5G, et cetera, there's all these stressors that just food alone will not take care of.
Well, and it's not just the body. I mean, if they don't stop 5G, even if you've got the best pendants in the world and everything else, if it kills all the rest of the biosphere, it's not going to be really great for the humans.
Exactly. And I see that. I live here on 5 acres in Florida. I've got nature all around me.
Yeah.
And, I see, like the other day, they were spraying for mosquitoes here, which is totally insane because it's not like they're using some benign poisons. They're using poisons that are just as toxic as DDT. Generally
neurotoxins, right?
Exactly. And they're known neurotoxins, and they, you call them up and say, what are you spraying? And they tell you, and then you go look up the MSDS, and it's exactly that: brain damage, nervous system damage, la, la, la.
Yeah.
And yet they spray it over huge areas. And I look out, and I'm like bringing my animals in and keeping them indoors for 5 days straight and that kind of stuff. And staying, indoors. And then I look at the animals outside, like the eagles and the ospreys, and there's no break for them.
Yeah, exactly.
It's insane. And of course, whole species are dying off. I mean, there's whole species of plants and animals here that are gone.
Yeah. It's definitely intentional, but some way has to be found to turn it around. And the only thing that I can think of at the moment, and my main focus is solutions for the overall problem that you just described. And it has to be something if it's going to get fixed, the only way I can see to do it is to change the consciousness of the perpetrators.
Precise.
Not just everybody else.
Precise.
And we have to change ourselves to become so strong that our influence by resonance changes them.
Precisely. You've hit the nail on the head because, and this is what these enlightened gurus and swamis and people say, the same thing. That's why they focus on not just raising and enlightening the people, average people, but also going to the politicians. India, for the first time ever, has a leader who is a meditator, and he's a student of Sadhgurus. And so if you can get these insane so-called leaders on this planet, and also, affecting the extraterrestrial influence as well, that's another part that's not talked about.
Right.
Because a big reason why we have all this insanity on our planet is because of the extraterrestrial influence that's been going on here for thousands of years, that's been mind controlling our whole planetary population for thousands of years. Those kinds of things have to be acknowledged and not feared, but shifted by shifting ourselves.
Yeah, because you got to be able to change people that you can't talk to.
Exactly. It's like, how are you going to enlighten the president of the United States or, the president of Russia or China or whatever? Or
even somebody local that's so intimidating and nasty that, forget normal communication.
Exactly. And it's a big challenge. And, this is something that Sadhguru says that his goal is to enlighten the entire planet. And he says he knows that he will not be able to do that in this lifetime. And so he said that we should all have goals that are bigger than we can achieve in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And I certainly feel that way with the stuff that I'm doing. It's like, I don't know if I'm in my lifetime, I don't know if I'm going to see the results of, what I'm teaching spread en masse, but I'm not going to give up doing my best to get it out there.
A small critical minority can do a lot,
Exactly.
Not just because they're handing out petitions, but their frequency gets so focused and coherent that when they think of harmony for everybody else, it's not just a nice belief and chant. It actually starts happening. And,
exactly.
I'd like to think that that's not necessarily limited or not necessarily impossible, because on the other side, the destruction side, they're increasing their timetable right now to make it happen sooner. And I think we have to get, pay more attention to the work that we're expected to do. Those of us that have any awareness of it have a responsibility to try to do better if we can.
Exactly. And even if you're not interested in saving the world, if you do these things to maintain your own health and happiness, if you're happy and healthy amidst everything that's going on this planet, people will flock to you asking you, what are you doing?
Right.
It's like
the ones that don't ask you are going to be affected.
Exactly. It was very true. I was, a couple weeks ago, my nephew is in college and he's in business school, and he was in a class where they had to interview the CEO of a company, about how they run their business. And so they interviewed me, and I was like, well, you have to understand, I'm very, very different in the way I run my business than most CEOs, because I use a love-based approach rather than a fear-based approach. But in the course of that conversation, when it came out that I was 58 years old, they were in shock because, their parents don't look like this at my age. They look much, much older.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good sign.
And by the way, I don't know if we answered that question about the gray hair, but gray hair, particularly premature gray hair, is mineral deficiencies and acidity in the body. The hair follicles, along with loss of minerals like magnesium and copper, it can be different ones, but along with that mineral loss causing the color change, when the body is toxic and acidic, the hair follicles will actually create hydrogen peroxide that will bleach the hair as it's growing out of your head.
Wow, that's interesting.
So,
they do that because of lack of minerals? That's a lack of minerals?
Yes. And I know I had when I first got out of the computer business, working in the corporate world, and was transitioning unknowingly at the time, I was transitioning into natural health. I just was, in my mind, I was getting out of the corporate world, and I was making pottery for a living. And I was apprenticing with this potter friend of mine who had pepper gray hair. And I knew nothing about natural health, but he was studying with this lady who had worked with Gabriel Cousens, who knew all about natural health and natural healing. And she got him interested in wheatgrass juice. And so it just so happened he lived next to a wheat field. So when they planted it, he started juicing it like a madman. And he was drinking mass quantities of it. He was bathing in it. He would put cups of wheatgrass juice in his bath water and bathe in it. He was washing his hair with it. He was putting it in every orifice of his body. He was doing enemas with it. He was doing rectal implants with it, with full strength wheatgrass juice.
That's pretty serious wheatgrass devotion.
This dude went nuts with it. He was putting it in his eyes, his ears.
That's like the wheatgrass guru or something.
Yeah, and that's all he did. He didn't even change his diet.
Yeah.
And yet, he was a smoker also. Wow. And he wound up quitting cigarettes. He just lost his taste for cigarettes. He pooped out a couple of pounds of worms. His leathery brown skin became white and wrinkles went away. It became smooth. His pepper gray hair turned jet black in about 3 months. So,
and that was from how much wheatgrass?
Oh, mass quantities.
A gallon a day or something?
He was probably drinking 8 ounces a day. He was bathing in it. He was washing his hair in full-strength wheatgrass juice. He was doing wheatgrass juice enemas for weeks at a time, where you put, for those that are interested, you take 4 to 6 ounces of wheatgrass juice, fresh squeezed, and you put it in a 1,500 cc or a half-gallon enema bag, and you do an enema with that.
Dilute it with water or just straight?
Yeah, you use that in 1,500 cc's of purified water or distilled water, or a half gallon of water, but basically a large quantity of it, not a little fleet enema. And then before you go to bed at night, normally when I do enemas, I do it when I'm cleansing, and I'll do it in the morning, first thing in the morning.
Right.
And then at night before I go to bed, I will do a rectal implant where you take 4 ounces of wheatgrass full strength in a squeeze bulb, which you can get at the drugstore, and squirt that up your booty before you go to bed.
Right.
And the way I do that is I get in a bathtub and I get down on my hands and knees, and with my rear end up in the air, and I squirt it in, lubricate the tip of the tube with a little coconut oil or something like that. And then you squirt it in there, and it wants to come out, especially if you're toxic. It really wants to come out.
So what do you do? Your best. Stay there until it stops doing that? Yeah.
You just hold it in, and eventually your intestines will stop
relaxing.
And fall asleep. But what that'll do is it'll go into the large intestine, and it will detox it and break up mucoid plaque and stuff like that. But it also will hit the vein. There's a large vein on the transverse colon that goes to the liver, and it will, at nighttime, your liver dumps toxins through that vein into the large intestine.
Is that the portal vein?
Yes. And so when you do that, that vein will actually uptake the wheatgrass to the liver and help detox the liver. And then it's not unusual for it to wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. For people that have a hard time sleeping, if they wake up in the middle of the night, it's usually because your liver is dumping toxins. Yeah. So when you clean up your liver, that usually goes away.
Wow.
So
I know
that's
the way that they're selling wheatgrass now is a little tiny thing like this with some grasses coming out, and it's like $3. So you'd need like $1,000 a week to do.
Yeah, that's it. It's crazy expensive to buy it. So I've been teaching people how to grow it, and actually I'll give you guys a link to a hidden page on my website where you can get my sprouting instructions for growing wheatgrass and other sprouts.
Yeah, because you'd really need a large quantity of wheatgrass to do that.
You do. You need a big quantity of it, and I do mass quantities. And if you grow wheatgrass like I grow it, you'll have 16-inch tall wheatgrass that's loaded with nutrients and high in ormus, and you'll get a lot more juice out of it when you're juicing it.
Is that a link you have to give us later, or can you say?
No, I can give it to you now. It's downloads with an S, downloads.freshandalive.com. Now, I've got a bunch of other freebies there as well, like how to brew effective microorganisms and make your own probiotics and medicines. But with wheatgrass, you can get the sprouting download there. It's a PDF. And I can tell you in a nutshell, the trick to sprouting in soil, you can sprout in your kitchen without soil very, very simply, just using little glass Pyrex bowls and, soaking the seeds overnight and then keeping them drained and rinsed a couple times a day.
Right.
And then you can put them in the fridge. But for growing
in a jar, like a mason jar too? Can you do that?
Yeah.
Do they mold?
No, for bigger sprouts like lentils or mung beans or something like that, green peas, those are some I sprout a lot. Those bigger ones, you can just put them in a bowl, soak them overnight for about 8 hours, and then keep them rinsed a couple times a day, and they'll just sprout in the bowl. I get those Pyrex bowls, glass Pyrex bowls. You can get them at like Walmart and Target. That have a plastic lid on them, and I'll just lay the lid over it with it a little bit open so it gets a little bit of ventilation. But they won't mold. You just keep them rinsed and you put them in the fridge, and then you can keep them in the fridge.
Okay.
For growing wheatgrass, you basically do the same thing. You soak the seeds overnight for about 8 hours. It doesn't matter what kind of wheatgrass seed you use. It can be spring wheat, winter wheat, doesn't matter. Pastry wheat, doesn't matter.
Right.
But the trick to growing any kind of sprout in soil and not have it grow mold is, number one, get seeds from a good source, which means Jaffe Brothers, which their website is organicfruitsandnuts.com. Or let's see, the other place I used to be called Handy Pantry. Let me see if I can get their website. TrueLeafMarket.com. They sell sprouting seeds. Those two companies sell seeds. They sell them fast enough that they don't get mold on them. If you've got them sitting around in buckets and silos and stuff, they want to get. So I've never had mold problems with their seeds. TrueLeafMarket.com and OrganicFruitsAndNuts.com. Start with those seeds, and then for any of them that you're going to sprout in soil, you also need to use good soil that doesn't have mold spores in it, but also doesn't have chemicals in it.
Right.
A lot of organic soils, like Miracle Grow organic soil, sold in places like Home Depot and all that, they do have toxic chemicals in them. They have wetting agents and stuff like that.
Right.
So I recommend using Fox Farms soil, which you can get all over the country. I think their website is foxfarmfertilizer.com. Okay. But you can go to their website and you can see where it's sold in your area. Okay. And that's a really, really good soil that doesn't have mold spores in it. It's high in ormus, grows really good sprouts. And you get those trays that are like 8 inches by 16 inches for like nurseries use. And you just take one of those, fill it about 3/4 of the way full with the soil. And then once you've sprouted your wheat berries or whatever it is in your kitchen, soak them overnight. Once you've soaked them overnight, keep them rinsed. Rinsing is important, at least twice a day in air conditioning. If you're in a hot, humid, non-air conditioning apartment or camper or whatever, it's going to be a lot more difficult. You need dry air. So in air conditioning, keep them rinsed, because if you don't rinse them, then they start getting bacteria and stuff in them that will make the mold happen when they get put on the soil. So keep them rinsed well. Don't soak them too long. If you leave the seeds sitting and it starts bubbling and you get a bubbly foam, then you're going to get mold because they're fermenting.
Yeah, it's fermenting. Exactly.
So just soak them about 8 hours, even less. You could soak them 6 hours, and then just keep them moist and rinsed in a bowl or a pan, slightly covered, or I'd say mostly covered, so they don't dry out. But they also have a little bit of ventilation. And then after a day or two at most, when they get little tails on them, rinse them one more time and put them on your soil. Right. And for people starting out, I use 1 cup of dry wheatgrass berries to 1 tray of soil. Right. When you get more experienced, you can bump it up to 1.5 cups. But part of what gets mold on your sprouts, particularly wheatgrass, is the roots not getting enough oxygen around them. And so when you pack them too tightly, if you plant them too tightly, they don't get enough air circulation around the roots.
Exactly,
So start out with 1 cup of dry seeds.
Okay.
And then the other thing is to grow them in air conditioning. Don't try growing them outdoors. Right. And they don't need to be grown in direct sunlight. Right. And then, when you spread the sprouts on the soil, put an empty tray on top so that they're dark. Okay. And after 2-3 days, they will grow and push up that tray up about 1 inch. Once they grow about 1 inch tall, then you can remove that tray and then grow them in near a window or in sunlight. Okay. So grow it in air conditioning. That's a major key. Dry air makes it much, much easier. If you've got I grow mine in a porch room where it's warmer than it'll get up to about 80, 85 degrees in the summertime in there, but it's still dry air because it is air conditioned. And so I'll have a fan blowing, either a ceiling fan or some kind of fan blowing over the sprouts, and that'll help keep the air circulating. If they're just sitting there and there's no air circulation and it's not air conditioning and it's hot and humid and the sprout seeds are too close together, all that's going to combine and create mold in your sprouts. And so that's basically how you avoid it. Keep the sprouts from being too dense, keep the air circulation, dry air, good seeds that come from a good company that's not going to have mold spores on them, good soil. Do not use soil from your yard. You will definitely get mold and probably other problems as well. Fox Farm soil is the best soil that I know of. You do all that, you will have perfect sprouts every time. And another thing you can do to radically improve the nutrition in your sprouts is feed your sprouts ormus. And so you can take the Vancouver Island ormus, or you can take, there's another brand called Humana Gold, Humanna Gold, and you just mix like a tablespoon or 2 per gallon of water and water your sprouts with that. you'll get crazy big, healthy sprouts that are massively nutrient dense. And so that's what I do. And then if you want to take it even a notch further than that, grow them in a scalar field. Have one of my devices like my Rest Shield. I've got one next to my sprouts. They will actually feed directly off of the scalar energy coming off of the pyramid. And so if the sprouts are uptaking ormus, the more superconductivity they have in them, the more that those sprouts are going to grow and get big and be nutrient dense. And I'll tell you a little story to this end, just to give you an example on this. I was visiting Dr. Joe Mercola, who's a neighbor of mine. He lives about a half hour north of me. And he had gone down to Hippocrates Health Institute, and he got all excited about sprouting because they teach sprouting. And he came back and he wanted to grow wheatgrass and other sprouts. And I just happened to be visiting his house when he had that going on, and his sprouts were pathetic. And so I said, what's going on here? And he said, well, I'm trying to sprout. And I said, well, this ain't happening. So I just told him 4 things. I said, just do these 4 things. And it was basically these things I'm telling you guys. And so, being Dr. Mercola, he didn't just put it in one ear and out the other. He wrote it down and he did it. And so a couple of weeks later, I was back visiting his house and he had gigantic, beautiful, healthy sprouts and everything. And actually, he called me before I went and visited him. And he called me up and he's like, what the hell is this? And I said, dude, I've been trying to tell you all along, scalar energy and ormus. You need to know about these things, scalar energy and ormus. So it was a combination of, having those, feeding those sprouts, ormus, which was one of the things I told him, doing everything right, and then having one of my Rest Shields. He actually had one of my home shields outside. And so all of that, he was getting phenomenal results. And so we wound up having a 4-hour phone conversation about scalar energy ormus because he said, I haven't been this excited since I went from allopathic to naturopathic.
Right.
So it works.
So since I was out for a second, you were talking about putting the ormus on sprouts that are growing and on wheatgrass? Right.
Yeah, the Vancouver Island ormus, or there's one called Humana Gold. Any of those, you can even make your own. There's a good book if you want to make your own called Ormus Modern Day Alchemy by Chris Emmons, Emmons, which you can get on Amazon. And it'll tell you how to use what's called the wet method to make an ormus precipitate. And you can play around with that, but don't ingest that stuff unless you test it first.
Right.
Because you can get poisoned with heavy metals and all kinds of things if you do it wrong. But it's not expensive. I mean, for what Vancouver Island ormus and Humana Gold and others cost, you're only going to use like 2 tablespoons in a gallon of water to water your sprouts with. So it's pretty cheap. Right. And I do that, by the way, with everything I grow. I do it with my sprouts. I do it with my tower gardens. I have 3 Juice Plus tower gardens where I grow herbs and greens and stuff hydroponically. And it's absolutely amazing. I put a little bit of that ormus in there along with the plant food that they recommend for the tower gardens. Uh-huh. And we have, for less than $100, one of those tower gardens will grow enough food for my wife and I to have giant salads every day for 6 months.
Wow.
So it's cheap, nutrient-dense food. And then, of course, I use it in my greenhouse. Like right now, we had a friend over who's a gardener who helps us with our gardening. And we've got tomato plants that were planted about 6 weeks ago, and they're already about 10 feet tall.
Right.
And by the time they get mature and they're fruiting, they'll be 15 feet tall, and they'll have hundreds of nutrient-dense tomatoes on them.
Does it freeze where you are?
Occasionally it does, every 4 or 5 years. But since I've put the home shield out, we haven't had any freezes since 2012.
Also, those plants are in a greenhouse. So, since tomatoes are perennials in the jungle, have you ever tried to grow them more than a year? Yeah, I have. Usually what happens, because we grow them in the greenhouse to keep them protected in the wintertime, by the time the summer rolls around, usually around July, they start dying off. They get too hot? Heat. Okay.
Yeah, the heat, humidity. But they'll fruit for 4 or 5 months straight or more. Yeah. I mean, like when we finally took them down, they were looking dried up and shriveled, but they still had tomatoes growing on them. Mm-hmm. So they just keep fruiting and fruiting and fruiting and fruiting. It's amazing. Yeah, pretty neat.
Before we wrap up here, and I've kept you over time, I apologize for that, but it's gone by very quickly as always. How do people stay in touch with what you're going to do, and what big events do you have coming up that people need to be aware of?
Well, the next event that I have coming up is on November 16th here at my house. Actually, I'm having a raw food potluck bonfire.
Okay.
And so occasionally we get people flying in from other states for that. It's pretty funny. But that, if you really want to hang out with me and talk to me, that's the best way to do it other than at an event, because I hang out around the fire till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and people just hang out and talk all night long. So I'm doing that on the 16th. It's a Saturday.
How did they arrange to get an invitation to that, or to know?
Well, it's open to the public. You just go to freshonlive.com on the events page, and the details are there.
Okay.
It tells you how to get there and everything. Yeah, and we have an accommodations page on our website. Of course, Airbnb is probably the best, cheapest thing to get around here.
Yeah.
Which we have a link to on our site. But there's hotels and campgrounds and stuff like that, and that kind of thing. And then so that's the next event I've got coming up. And then December, I'll be in India for 3 weeks, and I will be speaking at least the Pyramid Spiritual Society Movement's annual 10-day conference. So I'll be speaking there, and I'll probably be speaking at some other places around India. So if anybody in India or if anybody's interested in going to India and wants to go to that, just email us and we can give you some details.
Okay.
And then I may go to South Africa in February, depending on my schedule, and hang out with Sam Osmanagic from the Bosnia Pyramids and Michael Tellinger, who's a brilliant guy who's made a lot of amazing discoveries about archaeological sites around the world and around Southern Africa. Mm-hmm. That'll be really, really cool. I just don't know if I'll have time, but I'd like to do that. And then for sure in April, I think it's April 2nd through the 6th, it's like 4 or 5 days, we're going to do a pyramid building workshop here at my house in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, with Dr. Valery Uvarov, the Russian pyramid scientist. And that will definitely be an event, because Valery is one of the few people who can blow my mind continually. When I talk to him, he's always blowing my mind. Yeah. He's had ET contact. He was actually years ago in the KGB, and it was his job to investigate UFO incidents and things. And he has encountered ETs and had a lot of really, really interesting information given to him.
Were the Russians shooting him down like the Americans were?
Probably. I haven't talked to him about that. He told me more about his experiences encountering these ETs and what they told him. And interestingly enough, it jibed with what I was told, but he expanded on a few things and I expanded on a few things. But he's just a really, really cool guy and a really wonderful guy, and very interesting character. And for anybody that looks him up online, by the way, he built a large pyramid healing center with some investors. Some people wanted to build a pyramid-shaped healing center, and they spent $1 million doing it, and he advised them on it. And then when it was finally built, they discovered that the pyramid was amplifying everybody's personalities. And so, which is not always a good thing. It's like if you're basically good, that can be a good thing. But apparently it caused some problems. And so Valery realized that it was going to cause people harm. So he went public with the information and told people not to be working there and stuff. And so basically these people that spent $1 million lost their money, and they became irate, and then they started trashing his reputation online, and they actually hacked his website and stole his website from him and stuff.
Why is that not happening in Sam's facility?
Because in Bosnia, nobody would help him. Basically, it's like, he's had a lot of investors and people contributing and donating to him, but initially he funded everything. He funded.
Yeah, but I mean, when the people go under the pyramids and get healed in Bosnia,
well, it's because they're not.
Why don't they have the personality problem?
It's because they're not living in them. It's prolonged exposure. It's like ingesting too much ormus. Part of the problem with ormus is that it makes you more of who you are. So if you're fearful or whatever, you're going to become more of that.
Well, so if they were smart, instead of closing the pyramid, they would have limited the hours that people spend.
Well, I don't know what they did. I don't know all of the details, but that's what I hear about it.
Right.
And so they've done all kinds of things to try and trash his reputation. From what I've seen of him, he seems to be a very kind and ethical person, and I just don't see him being definitely not what they claim him to be. So, but he's a really cool cat to hang out with. And so, when we do the pyramid workshop here, we'll be having bonfires and that kind of stuff. And it'll just be a good time.
I would think that when you guys talk about ET experiences, that the main thing that comes from benevolent ETs would be, what can we do to help the humans become conscious?
Well, it's a lot of that. It's also the real history of our planet, mind control, how our planet has been mind controlled, how it worked and works, and why it's been done. And, like Valeri told me one thing that I had never heard before. It blew my mind. He said that benevolent ETs had given us technology that they knew would be used against the population and would harm the population, but at the same time, it would save humanity when we pass through a part of the galaxy that could destroy the Earth. Apparently there's a band of energy that the Earth passes through every 26,000 years or something that can create pole shifts and do things that can kill off all life on Earth. And so they gave us technology to help protect us from that stuff, but at the same time, it can be used for weaponry and mind control and all kinds of other things. And so I was like, I never thought about that.
Part of the frustration of working with species that aren't very conscious yet.
Exactly. And I said to him, so, how do we transition from a warmongering planet to a peaceful planet? And he said, yeah, that's the big trick. But he had a lot of insights, and then, a lot of things that he confirmed that I had also been told, and he didn't know. He had never heard anything in my story. And so, he's a really fascinating guy.
Yeah.
And I did an interview with him, by the way, on YouTube, where I interviewed him about pyramid energy and technology and stuff for people that are interested. And he's got some books that are really, really fascinating, and a lot of it came from his contact with extraterrestrials.
Okay. Yeah, if he's ever interested on being on more shows, let me know, because I'd like to.
Yeah, I can give you his contact information. He'd be happy to do it. He loves speaking to American audiences.
That would be fun. Also in India, are you going to visit the teacher you mentioned, the Sadhguru guy?
Most definitely. That's the first thing I'm doing when I get there. I'm going to be doing a 2-day yoga workshop with Sadhguru, and then that's in Chennai for anybody who's interested. And then I'm going north to Bangalore. Okay. Just outside of Bangalore, where the Pyramid Spiritual Society's Movement Conference is going to be held. And then after that's done, I'm going south and touring pyramid locations along the way, and I'm going to end up I'm going from Chennai north to Hyderabad. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm going to Hyderabad, where the pyramid conference is going to be. Then I go south to Bangalore and points along the way at these different pyramid places. So, it's going to be interesting. And then Patrici and his daughter, Pari Patri, are going to be with me, touring me around, showing me things. So that'll just be hanging out with them.
It's going to be incredible. Yeah. Does Sadhguru speak English?
Oh, absolutely. Perfect English. Yeah.
Why don't you come on the show with him when you're over there? Talk to America.
I'll see if I can.
I mean, I think it would be fun if he's open to it.
But, he's a real master, so I'd be like...
I know. He may have no interest at all, but we can find out, I guess.
But I could certainly, and you could probably connect with the Isha Foundation. He does lots and lots and lots of interviews. He only sleeps about 3 hours a night because he's purified his body and his mind to the point where he can do that.
That's enough, Yeah,
and he teaches people how to do that. And interestingly enough, too, he recommends at least 50% of the diet being living food.
So he's transformed his physical body as well, because not many of these gurus have.
Yes. Yes.
How old is he, do you know?
He looks like he's in his 60s, but I bet he's much older.
Yeah, interesting. That would be really interesting.
But if you check him out on YouTube, there are lots of short videos that his foundation has put out with him, and it's really...
ISHA?
Yeah, Isha, ISHA Foundation. But if you just search on Sadhguru, SADH Guru on YouTube, there's tons of videos that show up.
Okay, that would be very interesting.
Yeah.
There's no good point to cut off our conversation. I think, we'd have to bring sleeping bags to continue it. But,
I know.
I really appreciate it. It's very refreshing in the midst of all the usual world stuff to get to talk for a while.
Well, exactly, Richard. That's one of the reasons why I love talking to you, because you don't ask the usual questions. You have a much higher mind, and it's much more enjoyable and rewarding.
I never learned the usual questions to ask, so I have to think of it. So.
Right, exactly. Anyway. So, yeah, anytime.
All right. Well, hold on. We'll say goodbye in the break, and I hope it works out that we can do something while you're in India, too.
All right.
Okay, you guys, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. That was pretty amazing conversation, everything from rest shields to ETs and everything in between. That was Ken Rohla, and I really appreciate him taking his time out to visit Lost Arts Radio again. Remember, his site is freshandalive.com, and his other site is freshandaliveblog.com. And there's some really interesting products and information on there, and I've also seen a lot of stuff with him on YouTube and other platforms like that. So I recommend studying his stuff. I know some of the products that I've had from him, every single one of them so far has been great, which is nice to know, because it's hard sometimes to differentiate from all the sources which ones are good and which ones are bad. And some of the good ones, as Ken mentioned, are good but super expensive, and his are a lot more reasonable than some of them that I've seen, and especially given the fact that they actually work. At least the ones that I've used really work. So anyway, see what you think and study his stuff, and then remember, as we probably told you before, to get on the mailing list of Lost Arts Radio at lostartsradio.com. So in case we disappear from any of these sites, platforms, which is what's in progress right now, you won't lose touch with us, and we can still send information to you, and maybe embed videos and stuff like that. That mailing list, you'll see it at lostartsradio.com. We also have a channel on Brighteon, whose features are quickly increasing right now. That's at brighteon.com/channel/Lost Arts Radio. And we've got a new Subscribe Star channel if you want to help us stay on the air and complete expanding our work and actually be able to keep doing what we're doing. Would really like, if you have the resources to be able to help us, go to subscribestar.com/Lost Arts Radio. We also, as we mentioned, have planetaryhealingclub.com. That's for if you really want to start doing the work on yourself with getting your health and energy back, and working on your consciousness and your frame of mind and intent and focus during the day that makes you more effective at everything you do. That's what we're working on live every week at planetaryhealingclub.com, talking about overcoming aging and degenerative disease, fixing your immunity naturally, and things like that, and also the consciousness tools that go with that to make those changes possible without a lot of willpower and stress. And it just changes everything completely when you look at it in a slightly different way, and we talk about how to do that. Lots of interesting stuff going on. And then, let's see, what else did I forget to tell you? You might, if you want to look at our ultimate vision for the school that we want to build, you can see one configuration of that explained at lostartsresearchinstitute.org, lostartsresearchinstitute.org, and then look under the tab that says Eldamar, which is the name of the place that we'll be building, and let us know what you think. Any kind of feedback, comments, questions, etc. are welcome. I'll read all of them and respond as soon as time allows. You can reach me at richard@lostartsradio.com, and that's the same address to write to if you are interested in finding out about private sessions with me where we go over more in-depth health and consciousness information that is for the sake of life transformation. And I'll do those as often as I actually have time. Those are private live sessions on Skype generally, And if you want to know more about that, that's at richard@lostartsradio.com. Otherwise, watch for videos that we'll make during the week as time allows. And remember, our live show is on Saturday at, let's see, what is it, 4 o'clock or 4:30 Pacific, 5:30 Central, 5:30 Mountain, 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern Time every Saturday afternoon. And that's live update on things relating to what's going on in the world. And then 30 minutes after that's over, we start the live Planetary Healing Club meeting for the week, which you can access at planetaryhealingclub.com if you're ready for that. And otherwise, I think that's about everything. I hope you enjoyed the show, and have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Introducing Lost Arts Radio on Subscribestar.com. Just go to subscribestar.com/lostartsradio to find our rewards program, offering 10 different giving levels starting at just $5 a month. We offer incredible value for any rewards level, from extra monthly interview videos not available publicly to subscription-based Planetary Healing Club videos once, twice, or 3 times a month, to private counseling sessions with Lost Arts Radio host Richard Sachs, to tech help with me, Doug Diamond. We even have one option where you can be the star on Lost Arts Radio as our guest on a specially produced show just for you. We conduct an interview with you and broadcast it to our growing network and listenership. Our Subscribe Star levels are one of a kind and offer great rewards for any budget. Please help support Lost Arts Radio. We can't do it without you. With increasing censorship on many of our channels, we really need your support today to keep doing what we're doing. As Richard says, we're not even at survival level yet. Lost Arts Radio has 3 weekly shows. Lost Arts Radio Live each Saturday night at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, which is a live stream currently on multiple platforms in case we get banned from some of the larger ones. Right now, we're on 2 YouTube channels, Facebook Live, Periscope, which is Twitter, Twitch, and DLive. You can access these broadcasts by going to www.lostartsradio.com/live for all the links to those channels. The Planetary Healing Club meets right after Lost Arts Radio Live at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Saturday nights. And our Sunday show with guests airs at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Sunday nights on our Blog Talk Radio channel, our YouTube channels, Facebook pages, and on Brighteon. Be sure to sign up for our free email list just in case we do get banned on big tech's platforms. It's just a matter of time, really. They don't like the stuff we talk about, and they do not want the truth out there. In fact, they have already attacked us numerous times. Join our free email list so we can let you know where we are and how to access our shows. The sign up button is right on the top right on most pages of our website. The best starting point for all things Lost Arts Radio is our main site, lostartsradio.com, where you can find the hottest news selection videos that we curate just for you. Those are on the homepage and added to daily, as well as articles and breaking news about information you really need to know. Our show archives, the 10 most recent shows, are right on our homepage, as well as our Blog Talk Radio page at blogtalkradio.com/lostartsradio, or just click the All Things Radio Show tab right on our website. We're in the podcast directory on iTunes, and all of our shows except the banned ones are on our YouTube channels at Lost Arts Radio and at Diamond Disc. Our Brighteon page is really taking off, and we often have editors' picks videos right on their homepage. Visit brighteon.com/channel/LostArtsRadio. On our site, you can also access our free listener forum as well as sign up for the Planetary Healing Club, which is just $25 a month, where you get private access to a one-on-one interaction with host Richard Sachs and myself and the other club members who participate live. More info can be found at planetaryhealingclub.com. We're providing solutions in there to make the world a better place. Come join us. Stay tuned, because up next, you'll get to hear a really great song by an independent artist that we're doing our best to support. Go to lostartsradio.com/music for the full list of all the great songs and bands that we spin on our audio-only podcast shows. If you're in a band and want to submit a song for consideration for airplay on Lost Arts Radio, visit my website at diamonddiscaudio.com for more information. about the music placement, mastering, and mixing work that I do. Thanks again for listening to and supporting Lost Arts Radio. We love having you as part of our family to learn, experience, and grow with.